You don't have to. It's nice because you can hear yourself, so it helps a little bit.
I want to hear myself.
It's your choice.
Sound weird in the phone. So.
But it kind of helps too, where it's a little easier to hear other people talking and how it works.
I thought that patient was about to start wanking it to our voices the other day, dude.
You guys do have beautiful voices.
He was like, Jesus, these two voices here.
It's like you guys are magical unicorn
Which one's
creatures.
Fergie? Which one's Jesus?
We're both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, and just try to keep it about that.
Okay. Like closer, better. Like,
Yeah, a little closer. You want to be about a hand width apart.
am I supposed to say check, check?
Yeah, you're good. No, you're
Is that
solid,
good?
man.
All right.
No, I
check.
think we're good.
Right. Do I have to like stroke this carefully?
Yeah, just
Where's-
right.
At a
Where's the
medium
KY
pace.
jelly?
At a medium pace. Yeah, exactly.
That's right. All right. Nice and slow.
Can I check?
So you,
Check.
Tony, I don't know
Check. I can kind of hear it, but it's definitely not like. Yep.
that better?
Yeah, that's way better.
I hear you good. How about me?
you're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Sound okay? All right.
Yep.
You sound great.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
You just need like two little dangly balls.
Bro, can you say that line from Super Troopers for me?
Which one?
Drop your drawers and touch your toes. I'm gonna show you where the wild goose goes.
All right, here we go on that. Glen Goyhkberg.
Yes, sir.
I said it right.
That's right.
Awesome.
That's right.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Like we said, I don't have a plan for this at all, but from the reports that I've received from Tony,
Uh-huh.
you are nothing less than interesting to talk to.
Wow.
And so,
All right.
so far, yeah, it's setting the bar high. You can blame Tony on that one.
That's all right.
But so you guys work together at the addiction clinic, is that correct?
Nope.
No,
Negative.
different.
Negative.
Oh, different job.
Close.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
Different kind of
you-
drugs, yeah.
Different kind of drugs. Yeah. So, but you guys work together, and that's where you guys met and whatnot. And I know Tony's a couple times been like, he's like, yeah, I was having this conversation with Glenn. He's like, I feel like he should have been having the conversation with you, not me. But I don't know.
I'm all about a good conversation.
Yeah, that's what he said. So, well, I guess I haven't done this in a while, but
What's
a
that?
little backstory on who are you?
Who is Glenn?
Who's Glenn?
Who's Glenn?
Yeah.
Glenn's a 41-year-old dude married with 2 kids. Originally from Ukraine, Odessa, Ukraine. Came here in '89, so I was 10 years old when we came over here. I grew up in the Mayfield Heights area. Who am I? I mean, I think I'm a lot better at answering questions than that. But I mean, it's just, who am I? Like I said, I think I'm an average dude who likes to think outside the box sometimes, but keeps an open mind. I mean, I have my beliefs, but there's definitely a lot of things that are in the world that I enjoy talking about, thinking about, just contemplating. Have a degree in finance, so I mean, kind of a math/finance background, and I guess going back to your original point, Tony and I currently work at an HRT or hormone replacement clinic, so that's how we came to know each other. Enjoyed our chats. I think pretty like-minded in a number of things. Again, love my family, love my kids. If you want to, long walks on the beach, rainbows, unicorns, stuff like that. I enjoy talking about good stuff. I enjoy, last year, as we just talked about, got into bourbon a little bit, so I enjoy drinking some bourbon. Enjoy fishing, enjoy golfing, enjoy camping, time with my kids, just kind of seeing my kids grow. I mean, neatest thing that happened today, my 8-year-old sold a Rubik's Cube, so I thought that was fantastic.
No kidding.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool. That was something that he started about right before the New Year's. We got him one, and he's been kind of sticking with it the whole time. Every so often freak out, lose his mind, put it away for a couple of days.
Has he been cheating?
So, I mean, if you want to say by cheating, he actually, I let him watch YouTube videos, like,
Gotcha,
to get to that point.
right.
But, I mean, at least...
He's not pulling the stickers off or anything.
Correct. Yeah, like I did when I was his age. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. Or actually, I used to more like actually pull the pieces out. Like, pull the pieces out, like, put them back in. I'm like, yeah, I got this. But, yeah, so I think that was really cool, just kind of seeing an 8-year-old go through the progression of, like, the trials, the failures, tribulations, everything like that. And actually, today, he was sitting kind of a couple feet away from me, and I saw him just out of the corner of my eye as he put it together, and just that light up on his face and everything, like he just completely lost his shit. He's like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God. So we're just standing there like high-fiving each other. So I mean, that's all I got for now. So obviously throughout the course of this conversation, we can elaborate further, but that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think that's something special to talk about kids and seeing them grow up and seeing them when those things click.
Right.
And you go, you see them try, and then all of a sudden it just clicks. And it's like, I know that feeling. Like, that's cool. Like, it's super exciting for them to be able to realize that they can do something.
Correct.
I think, do you think part of that is it's got to, what makes it awesome is the failure all leading up the entire time, right? Like, I know we talked about this before too. The whole participation trophy thing,
Right.
you know,
Which is complete nonsense. Yeah.
yeah. If kids never fail, they don't never learn what it feels like to succeed.
Correct.
So you never get both.
Correct. Yeah, I'm a big fan of you have to fail before you can appreciate the value of success. So, I mean, anytime anything with them happens, I mean, they might have their freakouts. They might have their kind of the negative thought. I'm like, hey, things happen. Like, the world kind of sucks. I mean, life will kick you in the nuts every single day. So for me, I'm a big proponent of how do you evaluate, how do you step back, kind of evaluate the situation, what led you up to it, how do you learn from it, and then, how do you move on from it? So, I mean, the first maybe a couple of times that you do something, it could be an accident, could be a negative, but eventually if you keep doing the same thing, it becomes a choice. So, you have the option to either keep doing the same thing and having the failure or like learning from it and then moving on from it. So I think to that point, it's just, you do have to fail. And I think along those lines, I think me coming from another country and just, I think anything I've seen out there is when, and this is a challenge that I do have with my kids sometimes is, we had the challenges when we came over, in terms of whether people were like, hey, go back to Russia, in terms of the negative connotation of being an immigrant or just, anybody that I think has negative impact in their life from various events. I think that makes you stronger. So I think sometimes I have the challenge currently with, hey, I work my butt off, my work works our butt off. We want to give our kids everything, but then are we actually doing them more negative than positive by giving them more than we had? But then now they don't have a lot of the negatives that we had as to build a foundation to actually be able to learn from that and actually evolve and get better. So that is something that I kind of do struggle with. So I don't know about you guys and, kind of with your kids, but that's my thought at times, just in terms of, I want to work hard, give them whatever I can, but is that actually a negative at times versus a positive? So,
yeah, I mean, I know I'm the same way. I did not come from a different country, at least not in my lifetime.
No, not that you know of. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And maybe I think that's another thing too. A real quick side note, as you were saying that, I've kind of become really interested in timelines. We talked about the histo map, and we got it actually hung up in, the timelines of humans throughout, the history and where they moved, where we came from, and all these different things, and we've lost track of our history,
right?
As a human race, and we think that 50 years is such a long time frame. Well, it might be to one person, but that's nothing as far as the earth goes, or as far as the human race goes, all these things. And I guess that's why we try to do this, to be able to sit down and just talk to somebody for 2 to 3 hours. People don't do that anymore. And that's kind of the idea. But going back to what you said, I didn't come from much, I've had plenty of times in my younger days where I didn't know where my next meal was coming from, so to be able to, even do this now and, and be able to, provide for your family and, your kids, I struggle with the same thing as, yeah, sure. I have the money. I could buy you that,
right?
But I'm not going to, you want it? I'll find ways where, I guess for me, I'll try to find ways for, my kid to earn the money to buy something or to get something they want.
Right.
But to your point, like I don't like just giving, things to my kid. A lot of people we talk to are weird about it. They have this, like, even during Christmas or, birthdays where we don't buy our kid crap. Like, I'm not going to buy you a toy you're going to play with for 2 weeks and then just, if that, and then just throw it aside. Like, you know what? If you want something like that, you got to earn it. You got to earn it, so then you can waste your own money. But you're not wasting mine. So, like, but we give her practical things like, we give her like STEM kits and different things like that are fun, but still practical,
educational learning, Absolutely,
yeah. It's because, I mean, I'm starting to see that in her as well, as just that learning piece. Talk about kid with the Rubik's Cube, like being able to learn to do that, and there's some personal triumphs in that I think go a long way.
Huge.
Yeah, even outside of personal triumphs. So if you look at it from like neuroscience, it has to do with when you actually complete a task, and they say that the neurons actually change when you basically complete the journey, if you will, or complete the task. And it kind of lets those neurons develop into something different that otherwise, if you wouldn't have succeeded at it, you wouldn't get there.
Interesting.
So there is that aspect of the struggle, just because anything worthwhile, I think you need to struggle through. And that's what I do with my kids too. Like, they need to work. You need to struggle. You need to experience some sort of adversity because that builds like character. And it's going to make you appreciate it a hell of a lot more when you get there. But there's actually, like I was saying, there's a scientific element to that with the neurons and completing a task. And, if you're doing a workout or something and you're like, man, I got to get 10 rounds of these 10 sets and you get to 8, they've done like PET scans of the brain and shown, and then once you've completed it, they've done PET scans and shown something that's actually a little bit different.
Interesting.
Now, how long does that like, I don't know if physiologically is the correct word for it. Is that change for like good, or is it more like a,
I think it's a complementary, like cumulative thing is what it is. So as long as you keep completing them, and I don't think it's like you go back, it's just not additive if you don't continue it, if that makes sense.
I gotcha. It kind of like muscle trophy and stuff. You have to, in the same sense.
Keep building on it.
Yep.
Interesting.
I never heard that before.
Yeah.
I've heard like, you get, what's the hormone that gets released for, when you,
serotonin or dopamine?
Yeah, so like you get that dump of like, oh, like that felt good. Like, that, you know what I mean? Like that reward system. And
True.
But I didn't know it actually changed the neural activity. It's interesting. How do you know that?
I just read it, man. I
stayed at a Holiday Inn last night.
All the time. I'm just nonstop reading. These guys will say that sometimes. Like Gary always does that. He laughs. He's like, dude, why do you know that? I'm like, dude, I don't know. I just read. I just nonstop reading. And
that's right. So you were Gary too.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's gonna be here next weekend.
Oh, nice.
That and just talking to people, man. Honestly, like we don't have enough time to read everything, but if we're able to sit down and have these conversations, like you guys just learn that. I learn stuff from you guys all the time.
Osmosis.
Yeah, I think it's well.
I
guess there's liquor.
Osmosis.
I guess there's liquor here, so yeah, that could be
It's
osmosis.
kind
Good
of
to go. Yeah.
There's some water in here, right?
Yeah.
Right.
After a
Hydration.
while. Yeah.
So
Reading is a lost art, though. I mean, there's definitely less and less reading that goes on. So, I mean, something else I think that we did, I don't want to give ourselves kudos, but my kids destroy books. So, I mean, we're not big fans of having them be in their iPads or technology or things like that. I mean, there's a time and a place, but I think my daughter's probably read the Harry Potter series 4 times. So, I mean, they will absolutely destroy. I mean, they'll still go to the library. So, I mean, it's like a treat for them to, go pick out some books, reserve them, read them, and then kind of rinse, repeat, if you will. So, I mean, there's so much knowledge, information. I mean, right now that, our society is just instant gratification, if you will, to where I think by actually reading, you're slowing time down a little bit versus just going out there and Googling or something like that. Now you're actually processing, you're imagining things like that. So, I mean, just you're actually using your brains, and then hopefully actually along your points, your brains are actually forming the right neurons, connections, things like that, to where be able to kind of benefit on the back end.
I think it's a huge point. I think it's more than just gaining the information from what you're reading. It's that exercise,
right,
of using your brain and understanding and having different thoughts. And that's one big thing I know. I always enjoyed reading, but it was always like I just read crap.
Yeah.
This year has been different.
Comic book on the toilet.
Yeah, stuff like, you know what I mean? But this year's been a lot different. I've, gone all over the place for just searching, I think that's, again, what this is all about. Just
I don't think there's been a single day where you haven't sent me some article to read.
Yeah,
or
most of it's usually ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, but no, I mean, you're reading and it's not completely ridiculous. It's not It's not complete. I'll leave it at that. It's not completely ridiculous. I was going to cite an example, but the other cool thing I like that you do with your kids, because we talk on a weekly basis, is how much you have them out in nature.
Right.
I think that's huge, man. Like I try and have my kids out in nature as much as possible. I think there's something different that you get when you're outside. When you're romping and stomping, you're experiencing the woods, a creek. Things like that, and it's just cool to hear. There were tons of times where I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You're like, going camping with the kids,
right?
Doing Boy Scouts, or even just, hey, we're going to Kalahari. Like, dude, they're swimming, they're doing something that's physical.
Right.
Yep, exactly. So, and I think that you said reading's a lost art. Getting off your ass and getting getting away from video games.
Yeah. Physical activity is a lost art.
100%. Right.
Hello, diabetes and obesity.
Let's go cakes. Yeah. But I do have to give, I mean, along those points, I have to give a lot of credit to my wife because my wife, she's a runner. So, I mean, she does that. And, you know, when I'm at work, running stinks. When I'm at work, I mean, you know, she works part-time. So, I mean, she does the best that she can. But, yeah, I mean, she'll take them to the parks, like creek walking, stuff like that. And, you know, it's something, just always doing something active with them. So, I mean, I have to give her a lot of credit for, I think the both of us kind of, you know, I'll do the camping with them. She's not a camper, and like she'll stay home and I'll do that. Like, I love not taking a shower for 3 days. You know, I'm good with that. So I can burn my underwear. It's fine. So it's no big deal, which I've done. I'm like, let me just get rid of that. But yeah, so I mean, I'll do that. Like, I'm all for like roughing it, things like that. But yeah, she'll stay at home. But yeah, parks, nature walks, creek walking, just diving off little cliffs, things like that, just looking for like wildlife, just kind of, again, I think just enjoying, just, it's a beautiful world out there. I think we're pretty fortunate in Northeast Ohio. I mean, I think a lot of people talk negative about Cleveland or Northeast Ohio, whatever it is, but beautiful. Our Metro Park system is phenomenal. So, I mean, plenty of trails, rivers, lakes, you know, trees, just everything put together. So, I mean, it's a beautiful place. So I think you just have to get out there and look for it and enjoy yourself instead of just sitting there in front of the TV. I mean, but obviously there's a time and a place. So.
True.
Yeah. And I think talking about Ohio, and we've talked about years ago, the wife and I talked about moving because she hates the cold.
Yeah.
She just doesn't like being cold. But I mean, you think about all the different places now. I mean, out west seems pretty cool. All the stuff, all the terrain, everything out there seems really neat. But, you know, like Ohio, if nothing else, like we don't have earthquakes.
Right.
There's not really, every once in a while we get
Occasionally we have earthquakes.
Yeah, nothing.
Not big ones.
Nothing.
Until there's a big one.
Right, yeah, nothing worth it.
I mean, allegedly there's going to be a big one at some point in Ohio, but
yeah, eventually there's going to be a volcano in Ohio, probably. You know what I mean?
right. 3 million.
Yeah, I don't know. But there's, you know, we don't have to worry about hurricanes or, you know, for the most part, hurricanes and tornadoes and all those things. We get the occasional snowstorm, and
Right.
it's nice in the summer. And if you like, I guess if you don't like winter sports, but there's not really any hills, but
Right.
But still, it's, you know, it is a nice place to live, and at least I enjoy it. It's, you know,
And to raise a family. I think it's a great place to raise a family.
yeah, and I think there's nothing perfect about any one place, obviously, but I kind of like it.
I just like there's no poisonous snakes, you know. For some reason I don't like snakes.
Not actually. There's they're coming up.
Timber rattlers and copperheads.
Yeah,
I mean, like southern Ohio, but not really up here.
They were found. They were talking about rattlesnakes in.
They're all in DC.
DC, right? Right, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, they're
in the swamp of DC.
That's one thing I've noticed recently because I work in an industry that's out in the wild quite a bit, and they're coming up. We've had rattlesnakes as far north, even more north than Lake Tappan. So that, you know, that's just south of New Philly.
Okay.
You know, there's been mountain lion sightings down in southern Ohio.
Okay.
Bears are starting to come back now. Like, nature's starting to retake over, it seems like.
Coyotes. I mean, no doubt. I mean, monkeys are using stone tools. So, I mean, they're saying that right now monkeys are going through their, the stone revolution or evolution.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating to really consider all of that. I did want to ask you, because you mentioned, so you're from Ukraine.
Right.
You moved over when you were 10. How many do you have like a whole lot of memories of
I
before
do.
you came over?
I do. I think pretty good.
Odessa.
Odessa.
So, dude, just for the listeners, man, that don't know the like geography of Ukraine, kind of tell them a little bit about where it's at, what sea it's next to, that kind of thing, if you don't mind.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have the preconceived notion, you know, all of Russia, Ukraine is just a frozen tundra.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no doubt. No, Odessa I think it's a pretty unique place. I mean, both historically speaking and geographically speaking. So, you know, I would actually pretty closely equate it to Cleveland in terms of that. So, I mean, we had all 4 seasons, you know. Winters were winters, and then summers, it is a resort city. It's actually one of the oldest port cities in the world. So, I mean, it's pretty accessible. It's in the Black Sea. Across the Black Sea, you know, you have obviously Turkey, you know, Egypt, things like that too. So, I mean, you're talking about a pretty kind of, in the summer, a tropical type of atmosphere. So, I mean.
How close are like, if you were going to jump on a boat, how long would it take you to get to Turkey or Egypt? Or?
I mean, I know by a plane it was an hour and a half. So
okay,
I would
so very accessible.
Yeah, pretty close, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, we went back in the early. So I moved here in '89. Went back there in early 2000s, and part of our trip we went to actually Istanbul, Turkey for 4 days, and then we flew to Odessa, and that was like I said, an hour and a half trip. So
Okay.
we flew in like a Yak 42. I think it was one of those. If you remember, like some of the like the old like Indiana Jones movies,
Yeah.
like things like go in the back. There's a hole in the floor, things like that too. I'm like the seatbelt doesn't work, but I'm
Did
like,
you guys land or did you just take the raft and just?
Yeah.
yeah, no, we just glided in.
That's
yeah.
what I figured.
Yeah, there's duct tape holding everything together. I'm like, yeah, that was great. So I'm like, I just thank you, every baby Jesus, everybody out there that we landed. So, so yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact kind of topography, if you will, in terms of distance, but yeah, again, hour and a half flights. I mean,
That's pretty close.
was that 500 some probably miles or
Yeah.
kilometers if you're talking about the other system. So
Sure.
yeah, no, it was a great city. I mean, it's. I mean, I guess the difference would be is most of the population lives in like high-rise apartment buildings. So I mean, you're not talking about like suburban areas. You're not talking about a lot of houses. I mean, it's mostly kind of what you would from that point what you would imagine as Soviet Russia, if you will, in terms of just a lot of high-rise buildings, things like that. So that's kind of grew up. But I think maybe if you want to get into more into the weeds, I mean, we grew up. So I mean, my dad's an interesting character, so we can maybe talk about him at some point. So like, we had an apartment, but we also had a summer house. So I mean, a dacha, if you will. That's kind of what you would know it as. So, I mean, I lived, I think we were maybe half a mile away from the Black Sea. So I mean, we would go there at the end of May till early September. So spend 3 to 4 months every day. I'll go to the beach, do stuff, and just swim, fish. We had, like mollusks and kind of things like that, just growing off like the pier. So just dive into it, grab a knife, grab a basket, scrape a bunch of kind of stuff like, oysters, kind of like stuff like that, and just grab, whatever fire pit you can, and just, you can literally go from diving into eating within the next 20, 30 minutes. I mean, it was pretty cool. So
Sounds awesome.
yeah. As a kid, that was absolutely awesome. So, I mean, but obviously a different time, different place. I mean, but it was an interesting place. So. We had to get very creative. Not a lot of technology. So I mean, we definitely got very creative.
Yeah.
Very creative. So
Probably
not
giant
the safest.
sandbox.
Giant sandbox with sharp objects and quick projectiles. So
Oh, the strong will survive, though, right?
correct. That is correct. Yeah, not everybody did, but I mean, I made it through. So yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, growing up, I mean, obviously in that part of the world, war came through it, if you will. So I mean, I remember like digging places. I remember one time I found like a live ordnance. So like they called the police and like everybody and to like dig this thing out. So I mean, like oh wow, and like it was like a little like a cannon shell. So but like actually a full live piece of it. So can't really find that here. I don't think so.
No, not unless you dig super deep.
Correct.
Think.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I guess it depends how deep you dig.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your beliefs of human culture, right? So why did your family come over here? Was there a particular reason?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there's a reason that you moved halfway across the world, but
Yeah, I mean, so we left in the '89, so we actually left in the summer of it. So right before actually the wall came down, what was it, October, November, I think, in '89. Yeah, I mean, so I'm Jewish, so I mean, we kind of left as like refugees, if you will. So I mean, when we left, I mean, my family was actually doing very well at that point. So I mean, kind of, my dad figured out the system; he was working the system, if you will, but it was still one of those. Any given day, anything could happen. So, I mean, no guarantees. I mean, there were people getting killed all the time. There's people just, could be jogging somewhere, just getting gunned down, things like that. So it was just one of those where no guarantee about tomorrow. Like, you could be doing well today and tomorrow you could be dead. So, like, you could be on the street the following day. So it was just, at that point, I can, quoting my parents, America was the golden toilet. That's kind of the place to go to.
and now it's turned into a shit story.
Correct. Yeah. Everything was made out of gold.
Still a toilet, not so golden.
Yeah, so just the land of opportunity. So just one of those where you leave maybe what you have, and Tony and I talked about this the other day, so it's just kind of hit me at this point. Like, my parents were actually my age, like right now when they moved over, and I'm like, holy shit, like, can I imagine myself completely uprooting my entire family, my lifestyle, my everything, and moving to another country? That takes a lot of balls. I mean,
Dude, we always joke about how big the wheelbarrow was that his dad had to use to carry his balls.
yeah. But it was something that was long in the making. So to that part, so I mean, actually, so I was born in '79. So actually, my parents wanted to come over in the late '70s. Actually, to the point where there's a process you had to go through. You had to like file an application, like the Communist Party. they had to approve for you to like be able to leave. So my dad was actually part of the communist country. So yeah, actually like everybody had to be a part of the communist country. In essence, if you wanted
I don't
to,
think you get a choice, right?
you had no choice. Correct. Yeah, I was. Yeah, like the Boy Scouts here.
Listen up, America.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, no choice, zero choice. You had to be in the Communist Party. If not, you're completely like ostracized. So like whether you believe it or not, like you had to have your card. I was in something called like the Pioneers, or like kind of comparable saying too, but it's like the Boy Scouts here. Like if you've seen some photos, people like kids wearing like the red ribbons and stuff like that. So I mean, that was like their Boy Scouts. I mean, it's kind of a long story there, but again, it was part of the process. Like you had to like conform, or if not, you're pretty ostracized. So it was something that they filed for permission to be able to leave, in like 78, early 79 before I was born. And they were told, yeah, no problem. You guys can actually leave. It actually got to the point to where my parents sold everything they had. They got rid of the apartment. Like they got rid of like anything, couches, you name it. Like in essence, they had no place to go. And it was, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, half the family can go, the other half of the family cannot. So just like the way the papers came back, they're like, yeah, you can go, but only half the family can go. So in essence, long short, they had to start completely all over again. Like literally like rebuy stuff and just completely get back on track. And it wasn't easy to get an apartment. Like you had to like know somebody and things like that. It's not like you just go out there and like, hey, I like this apartment, I want to rent it. Like there's a process. Like there's like wheels you got to grease in order to get it. So it's a completely jacked up system, but that's how it worked. Like side story, my dad used to drive around like he had a car. Now most people didn't have a car. He had a car, but like he'd have a case of vodka in his trunk. He got pulled over. Here's a bottle, officer. Thank you. Have a good day type of thing. So I mean that was like get out of jail free card. So
now you know I carry bourbon all the time.
that's right. Just
the American version.
Yeah. Shut your body cam off. Yeah. So I mean that was kind of part of the story. So I mean, so they gave up on that for a period of time. So yeah, because really, if that would have came through, I would have been born here. Like I would have been born along the lines of transition here. So they gave up, and then at some point, just kind of as things were happening in the '80s and things like that too, and just to get away from the uncertainty and just hey, I'm gonna work hard. I'm gonna do what I can, and then kind of start the life over again. So that's kind of what caused us to come over here. So I mean, our journey was, you don't come straight here for the most part. So like the way we ended up being. And I'll tell you kind of the whole story. So we were leaving in the morning. So we had a bus coming for us first thing in the morning. So the night before, my parents called friends, family over, things like that. Like, so who was coming over was my family. So which was my dad, my mom and dad, my grandmother, my grandfather passed away at the time. My dad's mom, and then my uncle, his family. So 2 kids. So it was 9-10 people. So the night before we're coming over, they have a family gathering, drinking, whatever, just kind of saying goodbye, things like that. I'm out in the yard, an apartment yard playing. What do? I break my arm.
Oh, no.
Like literally the night before. So, I mean,
that's like the beginning of this whole shutdown thing. The kid like wanted to go run and play, but don't break anything. Correct. We can't go to the hospital.
And that's what I did. Yeah, that is what I did. So that's exactly what I did. So I'm just out there jumping around. I'm like, yeah, we had like they were kind of like these little monkey bars. So like, what do? We stacked up like these big like Mack tires, like 6 feet high, climb on them, jump on this 10-foot bar.
Why wouldn't you? Though, right?
Why not? It's nothing else to do. So I mean, yeah, that's what I do. So I jump and I slip and fall 10 feet down and I brace myself on my left wrist and I just looked like a purple snake. So I thankfully I didn't panic. So I walked into my mom. I'm like, I think I broke my arm. She's like, oh shit. So this is part of Russia as well. So it's like 9 o'clock at night, 8 or 9 o'clock at night. My dad already sold his car to somebody, so no car. And then my dad's at the dentist because he was getting his teeth fixed before we're leaving. Yeah. It's just such an odd system. So, I mean, it's, because you can't just do this, you can't just do that. So my mom's trying to get a hold of him. She can't get a hold of him because it's not like you just, there's no paramedics, there's no fire department, there's none of that. It's just you're kind of on your own. You got to find your way to go to the hospital. So I'm like, all right. So my mom ended up getting contact with the person that my dad sold the car to, some like random dude that bought the car. He came over, actually, thankfully, like drove me to the hospital, and then they finally got a hold of my dad. My dad might be in the hospital. We walk into like the ER, and there's like 40, 50 people there. And I'm number 40, grab a ticket type thing. Like, and, we're like, we got to be on the bus at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. It's like 9, 10 o'clock at night at this point. It's like, what do we do? So my dad had some cash on him, just starts paying off people, just like, all right, doctor, nurse, whatever it is. So next thing I know, 10 minutes later, I'm already, getting my just getting put to sleep and they're putting a cast on. So I get home at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and pack it up and then off we go. So our first stop was to go to Austria. So, I mean, that was kind of the first stop. Again, you don't go straight here. So the bus takes us there. So we spend a couple weeks in Austria. And then I had some so I had a full cast up to, half of my bicep. So some blood was coming out of my bicep, or kind of in that area in terms of where the cast was rubbing up. And so we go to the hospital, and the Austrians are like, oh, stupid Russians. They don't know what they're doing with the medicine, things like that. So they put a new cast on. So they took the cast off, put it on. And then, spent I think we spent a total of about 3 weeks there. And then we get to Italy. That was the next stop. And then we were there. So actually, that was probably a nice part because we're probably about a block away from the sea. The way Trinidad, we had a big ass house, just like a villa, literally a block away from the sea out there. I can't really swim. I remember putting a garbage bag on my arm and going into the water with my hand above my head and things like that too. But I remember being able to completely twist my wrist inside the cast left and right. I'm like, this doesn't feel right, but we'll see what happens. So go to the hospital there to take it off. They're like, yeah, stupid Austrians. They don't know what they're doing with their medical system. We got to re-break your arm. I'm like, that's fantastic. So, all right. So they re-break my arm, put another body cast on or another arm cast on. So then kind of go through the motions. When we're in Italy, we got to fill up our time. So my brother and I would, probably see some people in New York, used to go to the corner and just dump water in people's cars and stuff like that and brush it off with the window cleaner, stuff like that. Just try to collect some lira. So we got, we made a couple $100 doing something like that. And then every Sunday, I remember we had to go to the town square. And then they would read off the name of X amount of people. Hey, if your name got called, you're free to go type of thing. America will take you now. So at that point, we're supposed to go to New York originally. So we had some family there, and that was kind of how the whole thing came together in terms of who invited us, because you had to have, an invite from a family member. So we had some cousins in New York, and that's who invited us. So I remember going to the market square every Sunday. Hindsight, I'm Italy was awesome. I mean, beautiful, loved Italy. We traveled through different parts of it, things like that. I'm
what city was that?
So this was in Santa Marinella, Italy. So it was probably about 45 miles, west of Rome.
Okay.
Kind of in that general ballpark, but I mean, it was fantastic. Hindsight, I'm what were we in a hurry for? This is great.
Yeah.
Great weather, great food, great everything. I'm why are we hurry to go anywhere? But so yeah, long short, that's kind of what we did when we were there. And about 3.5 months in Italy, and then we ended up, so finally they're like, all right, our names got called, and they're like, you can't go to New York. I'm like, what do you mean we can't go to New York? New York is full. I guess we find out at some point, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that was my understanding. There's a quota that every city has, 25,000 people. We'll take 25,000 immigrants per year, legal immigrants. If not, either another city or you kind of go back to the back of the list. So I remember they're like, Cleveland, you actually have some family in Cleveland. Do you want to go to Cleveland? My dad's like, what the hell is Cleveland? What is that? You never heard of it. So he ended up calling, he had a cousin here, and my dad was outside of Wood, and we can talk about that later in terms of what he was doing. But he went to, he was in the Navy and then technical school, and he was a machinist, kind of by trade. That's what he grew up doing. So he ended up, getting in contact with his cousin, and the cousin's they talk about, he's how's manufacturing? How's that part of it? He's like, yeah, everything's great. So, I mean, yeah, back in 89, 90, I mean,
right, it was booming.
Yeah.
It was great. So, I mean, that's what I was like, all right, fuck it, we're going to Cleveland. So that's kind of how we ended up in Cleveland. So we came here, and yeah, I remember just, we came to, it was Plymouth Park Apartments in Mayfield Heights. That was pretty much Little Odessa or Little Russia. Mayfield pretty much at that year, back in the 70s, was more Parma, some of those places. But in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, because there was a couple different waves of people, kind of immigrants that came over from Russia. But in the late 80s, it was from, Mayfield was pretty receptive when you came to, taking the Russian immigrants or refugees, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, we ended up living there, and the first words my dad learned were give me draft, I give you jobs. I mean, I remember him telling us stories of him going, I remember, he would have an interview somewhere because, he would go through the Red Cross, the JCC, the Jewish Community Center, trying to line up interviews, things like that. I remember the night before, say he wouldn't be late, they would drive out to the place to see, where it's at, just to make sure, at that point you didn't have Google Maps or MapQuest or something like that. You're looking at a map, you're trying to figure out how to get there. So and yeah, so they would kind of check it out, scope it out the night before, and then you go up there in the morning, wearing a suit and stuff like that. And he was, like I said, give me draft. Give him what are you talking? He's like, draft job, So remember him telling us stories of they would just give him a piece of draft paper of here's how you tool a piece of machinery, and he'd be wearing a suit, walk into the machine shop and tool this piece in front of him, and that's how he ended up getting his first job. So
that's awesome.
That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even. That's. I think it's pretty phenomenal to. I'm really glad that you told that story because I think it's so many people, myself included, don't realize what it's like in other places.
Right.
You know, you especially, you know, I'll play the I'm getting older card. Kids these days.
Right.
Like
kids these days.
you just don't understand because I've said it before, we're just so insulated here. And people don't want to, maybe not necessarily they don't want to understand what's going on around the world, but you know, they got their tablet to watch,
right.
or they got, you know, they got some TV shows they want to watch, and they
right.
they have no idea what it's like for, you know, your kid breaks an arm, you can't even call an ambulance.
Right.
Like that's
there's
pretty,
no 911. Yeah.
That's pretty incredible. Is this? Do you know? Is it still that way in those parts, or
no? I think it's become more normalized, but I mean, it's still not what we have here. I mean, we have a fully functioning, you know, emergency system. So.
Yeah, and people give America's medical system crap. I mean, it's not great. Nothing's ever perfect, you know. No. So you said you went back in what, early 2000?
Early
you
2000.
Family there?
We do.
So is on both sides, you guys have a pretty big family, or is it just?
Not big, but I mean, it's diverse. So I mean, I think along the lines of kind of knowing what happened with the country as, you know, the wall fell. Obviously, at that point, you know, Ukraine became independent. So I mean, you know, it's. Unless you kind of know, you know, or if you don't, you don't. It's not really Russia, if you will. So like if people say like, where are you from? I'm from Ukraine, not really from Russia. I mean, it's easy to say I'm from Russia because that's what everybody knows that. But I mean, there's a huge dynamic when it comes to the Ukrainians and the Russians. So it's one of those you either know or you don't. So if I know the person that I'm speaking with, I'll say Ukraine. If I feel like they don't know, you know, a large part of that history, I'll just say Russia. Just kind of to keep it simple, if you will. But yeah, I mean, I think along those lines, I mean, very different dynamics. I mean, you know, in that, most parts of that world, you either have it or you don't. Like you have your top 1% and then like the bottom 99. There's no middle class. There's no like in between. So I think a case in point. So part of my family's doing very well. So what they have, so they literally bought out one of the floors of an apartment building, like 4,000 square feet, blew out all sorts of walls. You know, it was like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8-story apartment building, like blew out all the walls. So, I mean, now they have like this big ass apartment. They put a 4,000 gallon water like drum on top of it. So now they have access to water. So, I mean, everything's fine. You know, I have another family member there, like they're on pension, which is like $70 a month, which is like nothing, like literally nothing. And we went in there and they had a bathtub full of water because they never knew like when their water would be turned off or not. So like they needed to keep the water in hand every single time. So it's just definitely one of those. And I remember when I went back, so, I mean, I was my early 20s. Like I was making decent money, single guy. Like, you know, I had, you know, a couple bucks in my pocket. I'm like, I'm gonna be great. So we got there and my cousin's like, yeah, your money's no good here. So like whatever I had in my pocket, he had like 10 times as much like on him and things like that. So we actually had like some bodyguards. Like we would take us to like clubs and things like that. We would go party, have a good time, and like some like the fun memories I remember actually the one club we went to, like just, you know, we walk in, he's like, you know, imagine whatever Russian accent you would imagine, like, what do you want to drink? I'm like, I don't know, whatever. He's like, how about some Jack Daniels? I'm like, all right, guys, it's fine. Let's go with some Jack Daniels. So, you know, get bottles. So we're just having a good time. And then like it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, all right. And then you turn into like this little breakfast spot. So like you literally went to a club, you had a good time, you got drunk off your ass, and then they're serving you breakfast. And then, you know, you're back home at like 8 o'clock and going taking a nap. So I mean, it was a good time. But it's again, it's you either have it or you don't. And it's, I mean, I think a lot of what you see out of a lot of like the Russian oligarchs right now. I mean, most of those guys, how did they get, you know, how do you control like Rosneft? How do you get control of most of the oil utility companies? I mean, most of those guys, I'm not going to say everybody, but a lot of those guys were probably doing some things that were not above board, if you will, because what happened is they made some money. And then once the wall fell, if you will, you became kind of like a public, you know, you can buy into it, if you will. So, I mean, if those who had the money all of a sudden were able to buy into it, so they turned their, you know, thousands of millions into billions. I mean, that's kind of what happened. And then those who did not have much, even though they're allocated certain shares, they're like, well, let me sell it so I can actually make a little bit of money for my family, if you will. So, like, the rich got richer and then the poor got, you know, a little taste for a minute, but then got poor, if you will, because they did not keep on to it. So,
yeah, well, I think I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was the guy that that made the movie Icarus.
Okay.
I don't know if I haven't seen it, but it's about the doping scandal in the Olympics in Russia and always.
Is that Fogel? Is that his name?
Yeah, Fogel.
Okay.
And I actually bought the Dissident one because I want to watch that one. That's about the Jamal Khashoggi incident.
okay.
But he was talking about the Lance Armstrong debacle when he was, doping. Everyone knows who Lance Armstrong is. But he said he'd go to he talked to the top other 10 bicyclists that lost to him year after year. And, they're like, well, was he cheating? They're like, yeah. Were you cheating? Well, yeah. Is he still
not good enough?
Yeah. Is Lance Armstrong still is he the best cyclist ever was? And all of them were like, well, yeah. It's like when everybody's cheating, right. They think, well, it's not cheating. And if to win, if you have to cheat, then that's what people are going to end up doing. And it's just it seems like that's kind of like a system around the entire world where it's like, well, they're cheating, so now I'm going to have to cheat to out cheat them. And, and to some extent, some people can still do it and be honest with what they do. And but I think it's getting harder and harder to.
Yeah. But that's a small minority of the population, because I think most of us with our morals and everything, we want to go to work, we want to come home, spend time with our family, and then rinse and repeat. So, I mean, just want
to be left alone.
Yeah, just want to be left alone. So, I mean, I think it does take a unique character, whether it's here, whether it's in any part of the world, to truly rise to be that 0.0001% person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, it's funny. You mentioned as you're thinking about, I was talking to my brother-in-law the other day, and he was like, do you know there's 2 Irelands? And I'm like, well, yeah. I said, I do. He's like, and he was in the Air Force and traveled all around the world. So, I mean, he's been to a lot of different countries. Like, I never knew that. He's like, I just found that out just now. I was like, I know that. I said, I probably wouldn't know that had my mother's fiance is from Ireland, moved over here when I think he was like 17 because of all the conflict that was going on between Northern and Southern Ireland. But it was just, people were like, well, I never even knew there were 2 Irelands. Like, yeah, that's the thing, the separation between all these different countries and states and everything across the world. Is just, there's so much out there that we have no idea what's going on. Right. So many people. So that's pretty incredible. So you said your dad is a character. Obviously he has to be a character in order to go through the things that he did. Do you think that's where you get a lot of your,
whatever I have is 5% of what he's got. So, I mean, literally 5%. So, I mean, if he was born here, he'd be a politician. That's kind of how I would phrase it. I mean, he would be your Nancy Pelosi, your Chuck Schumer, one of those guys. Because, I mean, he can sweet talk you out of anything and everything. So,
sure as hell hope he wouldn't be Nancy Pelosi.
You know what I'm saying?
He's getting his hair done in the middle of a pandemic.
I mean, in terms of being able to convince people into like anything.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Silver tongued devil.
Yeah. But I mean, he was kicked out of the house when he was like 14 or 15. So, I mean, he lived in the streets, like he hustled. So, I mean, he had to do what he had to do to survive. So he kind of made the best of it, if you will. Just a hustler. So, I mean, just kind of knowing what the situation is and trying to make the best of it. Then he joined, as everybody had to join the Navy, and, when they turn 18, join the Navy. So, obviously kind of having that street background, he's like, how can I kind of hustle my way through this? So, I mean, he tried to figure some stuff out. So my dad's a very smart guy too. So, I mean, I think that helps. So, yeah, as he's kind of going through it, he ended up going to like a radio school component of it in terms of being like a radio relay officer. So top of his class. So then, he became friendly with the CEO. So he's kind of talking about it. All right, so where do I want to get stationed? He's like, your best place to go is like a part of, a couple 100 miles outside of Moscow. There's, a nuclear like rocket launch center. And I can tie this back actually to our transition to here as well. Like a nuclear, relay, it's one of those, the president, the commander Russian picks up the phone, you're launching the nuke. So, I mean, my dad was a couple steps away from having to do that, but what do you do with something like that? You really don't. You just drink, you play cards, you hang out, like you skip out, like, hey, my boys will cover me. I'll go to Moscow for a little bit, or St. Petersburg, go party for a little bit, or come back. So, I mean, you're not in the front lines. You're literally just hanging out, doing nothing. So, I mean, you just polishing and rocking.
Waiting for it to go off. Huh?
No pun intended. Right. Yeah. Just hoping you don't get that call. So that was kind of part of the stuff that he did. And then the other part was he was always good with his hands. So then as he kind of transitioned from some of that, like, he got assigned to a ship. And at that point, they had like competition with the different, like admirals, if you will, like different people control like other, ships, like destroyers, things like that too. So they actually had like a model building contest. So that's what my dad would do, is like he spent half his time in the Navy, like just sitting around polishing a rocket. The other half of the time just putting together, like toy submarines. But I mean, these things were, 8-10 feet long, if you will. So I mean, like meticulously planned out and things like that too. And just taking them to like, inter-military competitions and stuff like that. So that's how he spent his time in the military. But that being said, he still had access to some pretty classified, sensitive type stuff. So actually, when we came over here, actually before we were allowed to come over here, like it was interesting just in terms of just who knows what, like the governments of different agencies. Like actually, when we were in Italy, like actually one of the Americans, like one of ours at this point, actually like officers came over to the place we're staying at, and they're like, here, kind of come with us type of thing. So they actually had him go, and they went into the embassy, and he's like, yeah, I went down like 3, 4, 5 like different layers of the embassy, if you will, to where they had a conversation about, hey, just what'd you do in the Navy? Like, what'd you do when you're in the military and things like that too. And they're like, tell me about what you did. And he's like, tell me about Project Akula. I think it's translated to like shark here. So, I mean, he would tell him some stuff like that. He's like, is that what you wanted to know? He's like, yeah, we already knew all that. We want to make sure you're actually telling us the truth instead of like trying to like BS us or like actually thinking that you're some sort of like communist dissident that's coming over to maybe spy.
Right.
Yeah, and vice versa. So that was kind of neat. So he told him a good amount of stuff about that. And actually, I remember when we came here, like we ended up buying a house probably within about a year and a half of us being here. And actually there's a general that came over to the house and actually thanked them for having the conversation, actually giving them like some of the information. So I think my parents have a letter somewhere from like this 4 or 5-star general actually saying like, thanks for, sharing this information. So just knowing that it wasn't like bullshit, like us coming over here and trying to do anything. It was just literally just trying to further his family and things like that to create a better life. So
That's wild.
And it sounds like get the hell away from that unpredictability of what was going on in Ukraine at the time.
No doubt. And again, I think maybe to elaborate further on that, because like I said, I mean, I guess to the point we were doing well. So, Russia, again, it was money talks, like everything like that. So it was, I would describe it as a command economy. So my understanding of it was, and I'm sure I don't have all the facts, but just my understanding was the country at that time was broken down into X amount of quadrants. So, I mean, let's say it was 8 or 10. And where I'm going with this is like every single part of the country would get the same allotment of, and this is the truth, like pantyhose, books, bras, fur hats, things like that, diamonds, whatever it was. So you would have the same, let's say, 1,000 fur hats shipped to Moscow as you would to like Kazakhstan. Who the hell needs a fur hat in Kazakhstan? Nobody. So my dad would go to Kazakhstan and then, befriend some of, the people who ran the base, like, or just giant warehouses, have some drinks, whatever it was, just to where he would they're like, hey, all right, here's the keys to the warehouse. Literally would walk around, be like, all right, I'll take, a crate of this, I'll take a crate of that. And then, would then go to Moscow and sell these for hats. So you can buy them for, 10 rubles a hat and then sell them for 100 rubles a hat, or, buy it for $1, sell it for 10. So you just kind of knew the supply and demand. But that's kind of what happens is like when everybody's treated equally, if you will, like where there's no true supply and demand, you create inequalities, you control like that there's no balance, if you will. So there's an arbitrage to be taken care of. And that was what he realized. And again, with him being able to relate to people, have a good conversation with people, drink with them, whatever it took, if in essence, that's kind of how you got access. He got the keys to, those different warehouses and then just go through it was just so crazy. Like I remember him telling a story. They got an apartment. He wanted to buy just a nice furniture set. Like there's no Value City Furniture or Best Buy, whatever it is, to go buy furniture. Like you had to put yourself on some sort of list to have access to it. And only X amount of people got taken. So I remember him telling a story. He went to like Moscow. He knew somebody. They went to a warehouse. He got this thing and had to get shipped by train back to Odessa so we can buy this piece of furniture. I mean, just think about that. Like, you can't just go buy something. Like, you can't. There's either a list or you have to know somebody or grease the wheel just to have something as basic as a nice armoire. I mean, it's insane, but that's how it was.
I think there's a lot of places around the world that people live like that, or even worse, they don't even have the opportunity to buy a couch or whatever it is.
Which is a separate story, right?
Right. You've baffled me already.
I'm giving you a lot of stuff to talk about. So
I think so.
To elaborate.
Just so much. Yeah,
not to stay on this topic because we will, but man, I think and we've said this so many times, and we've had this conversation before that these are the things that people in the United States need to hear. You talked about your dad having to join up when he was 18, had to go into the Navy. I think that's a great thing. I think, I'm not saying everyone, stateside here should have to go in the military, but I think they should have to do some sort of service where they serve someone else, be it the Peace Corps, be it, Doctors Without Borders, something like that, where they're serving someone else, going to a different country, just meeting different people, seeing how they live. I think when you see those things, and I'm not saying America's, the greatest, the greatest country, if you will. I'm not, especially now. I'm not,
Yeah.
like we said, it's a toilet. I don't know if it's
having
golden
It's
anymore.
having its troubles.
But I do think that provides like perspective, and I think some of the most accepting people that I've ever met are those that have traveled and lived in other countries.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think it's huge. So, I mean, that is something that I think to maybe elaborate further. So we came here, and again, my parents had their background, so they wanted. So I have one brother, he's 5 years older, go to college. Don't care what it is, you got to get that piece of paper. So I mean, that was kind of what was instilled upon us. But as I feel like I've grown and evolved myself, unless my kids want to be, a lawyer, doctor, whatever actually requires a college education, I'm a huge proponent of whether it's being a plumber, electrician, things like that. So for many different reasons, let alone financial, let alone not being saddled with, a $200,000 mortgage for a communication degree and making 30, 40 grand a year. So, I mean, I think being, skilled trade is just a dying art. So, I mean, how many people I've talked to who are like, hey, we have the union, we have the labor halls, and they're empty. Like nobody 18, 19, 20 years old doesn't want to come in. I can give them a job tomorrow making $45,000 a year. Whether it's, digging ditches or, getting some training, running a backhoe, anything like that. So, yeah, it's my plan would be is if I am within means, if I can afford it, if my kids are cool with it, once they turn 18, I will do whatever I can, have them travel for 6 months, a year. Go make your bad decisions. Go learn. Just see the world. See what's going on out there. I mean,
As long as your bad decisions allow you to come back.
correct. Well, yeah, I think, right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, just to that point, like I'd rather have you make a bad decision when you're 18 than when you're 25 or 30, where it's a lot more difficult to recover from. So, and then, just support them along those lines and just kind of see the world, live, experience things that are out there. And then, because, here we're expected, you go straight from college or straight from high school to college. I mean, how many of us truly know what we want to be when you're 18? I mean, most people don't. So, I mean, but along these lines, I'd be all for, even though we got away, partly I was actually getting away because my brother was 14, 15 at the time that we left. So, I mean, 3 more years, he would have to have gone in the military. And my brother's personality is probably that he's kind of a nerd. So it's not the most conducive to the military aspect. And it's not your military here. I mean, whatever you imagine military here.
Communications or supply line, I'm sure would have fit right in.
I don't know. Or, I don't know. I mean, there were stories of, people being raped, like males being raped, like killed, like things like that. I mean, it's the military. Anything I know about that. I mean, it's like, you want to go in the trenches with somebody if you can't trust that person, or if like that person can't react accordingly, like get rid of them. And it's not a good thing to say, but I mean, that's kind of the reality. Because I mean, again, especially in that part of the world, I mean, you can be attacked anytime. Or like, I mean, it was more like the Cold War. So I mean, you had to be on standby. So like, if you can't trust the people, so I mean, so I think along those lines, like. But here I'm all for it. Like, any sort of service. Yeah, like you said, just in terms of, National Guard, anything like that, just get out there, get some structure. Just live a little bit before you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do for the next 30, 40, 50 years of my life. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, why can't you just take a couple of years to yourself, like, to enjoy life before, you go through the grind of whatever you do on a daily basis. So.
Especially at that age, too.
Right.
I mean, I didn't even realize that I was a shithead until I was like 25.
Right.
And then I was like, oh, I
I'm a
really
shithead.
am. I'm a shithead. Maybe I should try to figure this out. But in your younger 20s, like that's the time you should be out, making reasonable mistakes. But being able to culture yourself a little bit. Because I think, again, it goes back to I think it ties in both with the insulation that we have here and the lack of hardship that a lot of people have.
Sure.
Without a little bit of hardship and a little bit of exposure to the world, like you grow into, an asshole adult. And I feel like there's a lot of people out there that,
Entitled asshole adults.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That just don't get it. They just don't understand. I'm not saying that I do fully, but I like I said, I understand enough to realize that, oh, okay, I'm just some asshole. Like maybe I can do something to change that. And people don't think that way. At least most people don't think that way these days.
That's why I like to surround myself with, I don't have a lot of friends, but I mean, those that I am friends with, associated with. I mean, I know if I called them 2:00 in the morning, that'd be there and vice versa. So yeah, I'm a definitely quality over quantity type of person.
Yeah. But when did the Browns playing?
That's right. Yeah, when did they go down? Let's go. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's a big piece of it. So Are you making any plans to? Have you taken your kids over there? Or are you making any plans to like consider that, like taking the kids over to see where where you
I want
grew
to
up?
once they get older. Absolutely, yeah, I would absolutely love to go back there.
They said that one was 8, so that's pretty young. To try to
8
do
and 10.
something
Yeah, my
like
son's
that.
8. My daughter's 10. So I mean,
Yeah, I can see.
give it another probably 5, 7 years, something like that. So I mean, at least for them to be able to appreciate it. So
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like we talked about. When our daughter was real young, we'd see people like taking their kids to like Disneyland when they're 3.
Right. What's the point?
Why are you wasting thousands
Right.
of dollars to take a 3-year-old? You're
Right.
never going to remember it. Like,
They're doing it for themselves. They're really not
Yeah,
doing
like,
it for
I
the
just-
kids.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's like,
just
hey,
a
I took my kids to Disney. Yeah.
yeah, then why didn't you go before you had kids so you didn't have to spend that kind of money? Like, just, what,
Yeah, we took our kids to Disney like 4 years ago, so they were younger, but like we drove. So I mean, we did it on the cheap. So I mean, we drove,
Right.
Whatever it was, just kind of spend a week down there, but we didn't spend a whole lot of money. But yeah, I mean, a lot of that is I think just for the parents, for us to say like, hey, we did something for our kids. So I think it's that personal gratification versus actually, because how much of that are they actually going to remember? at 3 and 5?
allowing them to experience
Correct.
it.
Yeah.
That's what we had planned to go out west to see the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
Because I've never been that far west before, and we were planned on doing that in 2020 originally, like years ago.
And then 2020 happened.
Well, it was funny. It was the end of 2019, I think it was, where we were just thinking about it. We are trying to plan it out, and it was like, you know what, like something just. I just don't know. And like the place we're going to stay, we're only going to be able to see the Grand Canyon for like a day or 2.
Okay.
And then so we decided, you know what, like let's wait and actually make a week and a half long trip out west and go see a bunch of stuff out there because you
Nice.
have like Yosemite and all those
Right.
different things out there.
It's a big country.
Yeah, it is. And then so we decided, you know what, we'll just go to Tennessee for a week and just hang out there, like and go hiking and go to Gatlinburg. And we ended up doing that. We ended up making that decision, and then literally months later, COVID happened.
Right.
So it was like, well, I missed the bullet on that one. Like,
Right.
I don't think I'd want to be. I don't even know if we at that point when we planned if we would have even been able to fly out to, Arizona or Nevada or whatever. But
Right.
it's
Yeah, a lot more restrictions at that time. Just
Yeah.
in terms of what you're able to do, or that's a self quarantine part. Or,
right. But that's what like now our kid's 9, 8. I can't remember now.
yeah, somewhere
The
September.
birthday 2020 has been was a weird time lapse. I feel like we like traveled through time or something. Something weird happened.
I mean, in essence, now we're in month 13 or 2020. So
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I know I joked about it in June and basically the entire year of 2020. Everyone's like, "Oh, I just can't wait for 2020 to be over." Like, I don't think.
wait, yeah.
Yeah. I don't.
Hold my
think-
beer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fred was like, that's a mistake the entire time.
Yeah. Enjoy the quarantine and Netflix while you can. Because I don't think 2021 is going to be any better.
No. It's all, I mean, but I think kind of what we're talking about. I mean, a lot of things in life are what you make out of it. So, I mean, we all have the option. You either freak out and live in your basement for the last 9 months, or, hey, like, let me get closer to my kids. Let me, get more board games. Let me go camping. Let me, do bike rides. Let me go to the park. Let me get out there, have more family dinners. Let me learn how to cook. Let me learn how to bake. Let me do whatever it is. I mean, it's everything's a choice, right? That's the beauty of our country. Like, we have the choice. I mean, even though at times it's limited, but there's still choices that we have versus being completely shoved down our throats.
I was gonna say, I feel like we had more choices, but not
More
everyone
choices,
can
but we
recognize
still have a
that.
choice.
Sure. Yeah, there's still choices out there. Well, I think to your point, 2020, we talked about it too. It's been a fantastic year for me and my family.
Right.
We started this. I mean, I started a bunch of stuff. We talked about, I think before we started. I've done more reading this year than I've done in years, and it's actually substantial, beneficial reading.
Right.
That I'm actually learning something.
Okay.
My wife's she's starting a business and she's gotten all these different certifications she's a yoga instructor and
Nice.
does a bunch of different stuff. But
Do you feel guilty saying that though? Like at times, like, cause I feel similar to that.
Yeah.
But like I feel guilty saying that, like,
because there's people have, lost everything they've
Everything.
worked their entire lives for.
correct.
Restaurant owners and everything. And I guess it goes to tie into a mutual friend of Tony and I's. He was kind of freaking out about some stuff, and he's like, how are you guys so calm about everything that's going on? And then my response was kind of what you said. It's like, you know what? I can't control that.
Right.
All I can control is what I can do and my actions, and try to do the best I can for my family, make the right act, plan for the worst, hope for the best, and have a plan for each of them, and enjoy it while I'm here.
That's exactly how I feel. Yeah, just control your sphere. I mean, we have our sphere, like, we can get into the politics part of it, but I mean, there's the macro part and there's the micro part, and like for me, it's just what do I have control over? Everything else I can talk about. It's interesting to talk about. It's interesting to like contemplate or like maybe like the what ifs. But at the end of the day, like I have my house, I have my kids, I have my family, I have my job, I have a pillow to lay my head on. What do I control, and how do I make the part that's around me better, or at least add value to it? Because freaking out does absolutely nothing. So I mean, it's those people that will say, stuff sucks out there, and then that's it. Like, well, okay, if you don't agree with stuff, then propose some stuff, or what do you do about it? So I mean, it's like telling somebody to go sell without actually giving them a handbook as to how do you sell, or go build something. But if you don't tell somebody how to do it, it doesn't happen. So I mean,
Unless it's your dad.
Unless it's my dad, right?
Then he'll sell it.
Yeah, he's definitely a unique character. So.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Unless we don't have the choice, Tony. And it's all
God.
it's all programmed.
Here we go. We're in the Matrix. Yeah.
I think I will say I think there's some interesting theories to that, and
No doubt.
ideas for that. Maybe we've talked about it before, but I think we did, where it was essentially broken down as if this is we're doing everything we think we're doing, this is what it is, or we could be in a simulation or something of sorts of that, or it's the only reason we're not in a simulation is because humanity has been knocked down from getting to that point,
Right.
and we just haven't gotten to that point yet.
Or they evolved enough to the point to where this is what has to get created.
Right.
Yeah. Before they destroy themselves.
Yeah. But maybe it ties into the whole. I've been throwing a lot of Bible at Tony this week too.
Okay.
Maybe it ties into that where it really. This is like I had this thought earlier this week. I was thinking about the whole simulation and Matrix and different things like that. That maybe this is kind of like a job interview
For what?
for life after. They're like, as soon as you're born,
Okay.
you just get plugged in,
Okay.
and say our souls or whatever it is has this capability of living for thousands of years or longer or whatever. And all right, the first 80 to 100 years, let's see what kind of person you are.
Okay.
That's your job interview.
So like if you're a piece of shit at the end of it, you don't get the job. Like you're just you're done.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
then what happens?
Yeah, if you're that bad, you're just like, no,
Yeah,
that
we'll
one.
plug you.
Yeah, that one wasn't a good one.
All right.
Or if it's like, you know what, you made some mistakes, but we got some, floors that need cleaned.
Okay.
So you can do that.
You can be dog poop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can.
that's your
Yeah, you
job,
can
yeah.
be the dog poop picker upper and see what happens with you. Maybe I don't know.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think we were saying before, we're not even a speck of sand. Even that would be like too big.
Yeah.
We're talking about the Earth being what, 12. I think some people would say 8 billion, but I've seen some certain recent numbers actually thinking we're like 12, closer to like 11 point some billion years old. We're talking about 80 to 100 years out of like 10, 12 billion years.
Your brain can even think of those
Right.
numbers.
That's a lot of zeros.
Yeah.
You're just putting it all in context to where we are non-consequential. So it's
all you got to do is look at the histomap and go, where are we at? And then you see this little tiny thing on the freaking bottom, and you're like, oh,
and that's only 4,000 years.
you're like, that's awesome. There's more thousand years. Like what?
Yeah.
and then more million years,
Yeah.
more 100 million years, and then more billion years.
What's hard? I think that's a big thing is blowing my mind. Have you ever seen the or heard of the Magical Egypt series?
Tell me more. No.
So it's not Schock. Robert Schock. Do you know who Robert Schock is? John Anthony West.
I do not.
So John Anthony
I
West.
feel like I just disappointed you, but
No, it's okay. Yeah. No, you're fine. But so John Anthony West and Robert Schock, along with a couple other people like Randall Carlson or what's the other guy? Graham Hancock. So they all have different theories and they all have different explanations for this. But John Anthony West and Robert Schock are people that have spent a bunch of time over at Egypt.
okay.
Going over and studying the pyramids and the Sphinx and all these things.
Sure.
And Robert Schock proposed that the Sphinx, not only has the head been replaced, but that the erosion on the Sphinx shows that he thinks it dates back over 12,000 years old.
Right. I'm familiar with that. Yeah. In
Right.
terms of
So he was one of the first people to bring that idea up.
Okay.
So and then you've heard of Göbekli Tepe.
Sure.
So that's the archaeological site where they think there's hundreds of these structures or whatever, and that were
Probably where he was hanging out as a kid when he was in Turkey, bro.
I mean,
He's probably dusting it off.
yeah.
I mean, I think along those lines. So and we'll get back to your conversation. But it's amazing though, because again, I'm a U.S. citizen. I love America, but there's certainly times I'm like, hey, we're like 300 some years old. We're just we're like
Babies.
We're not even. Yeah, I mean, we're like an embryo or like in uterus.
Yeah.
Right.
Versus going to a place. Yeah, I mean, Turkey, Istanbul was probably one of my favorite places to visit, and I've been to Israel too. So I mean, like those two places were phenomenal because you go to a place like that and you realize like I'm standing somewhere where it's 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 years old structures, or you go back to Israel, whatever your religious belief is, like this is where Jesus walked, or whatever you want to say it. So it's just you're talking about structures that are just around for such a long time, and how much history has taken place. Like I don't know about you guys, but like at times, I look at a dollar bill. Like where's this dollar bill been? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, up a stripper's butt. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably a couple times.
Yeah, doing a line of coke. Yeah, probably. Yeah. But like, where's it been? Like, what country has it been in? Like, where's it been? Like things like that. It's just I'm just that's some of the stuff I like to think about sometimes out of the box in terms of like just the different things that kind of go on in the universe. But again, just come back. Like I said, we're America. We're a young country. We have a lot to learn, but other parts of the world are just old. Like I said, you're talking about that, or I think what made me think like when you talk about like the Sphinx, but like you look some of the Great Pyramids, there's a baseline like foundation to it that a lot of people would think are along the lines like just so much older than like the top part of it. So like how much of that? But then I think maybe we can maybe circle back our current politics now, plus I think history. History is written by winners. Mm-hmm. If you're a loser, you kind of get written out of existence.
Yeah.
We can talk about the great African kings, like things like that too. Just, I mean, at some point, the richest person in the world was an African, king, if you will, control most of, the gold reserves and things like that. But you really barely hear of anything like that now. So, I mean, it's all being kind of just completely changed. So, I mean.
Well, I think that even tying that into it, I think there's a lot of people that speculate that the Sphinx was actually a sub-Saharan, African face.
Yeah,
that's why they'll say there's evidence to show that the nose of the Sphinx had actually been broken off intentionally,
right? Because
it didn't resemble the quote unquote Egyptians that we think that this was built after, and it was like, no, this might have been an African king that this was built after.
Right.
That completely, like you said, that completely changes history.
Correct.
But yeah, tying the original reason why I got on that tangent with the Göbekli Tepe in Egypt was, there's things now that show that there's potential civilizations that are older than 12,000 years old. And we think we're so special in our 4,000 years.
Right.
That's 3 times longer. So once again, what's been here before us?
Yeah, I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but I mean,
there's no rules here.
Let's go. Let's dive in. Yeah, let's go. Bees deep. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those. I love history. I love the whole. I'm a big proponent of just those that don't know history or don't learn history, I'm like doomed to repeat it. So like, for me, I mean, there's definitely that part of, because if anything, just from a math point of view, again, if you're talking about whether it's 8 point some billion years or 11 some. You're talking about in the bees. You're talking about a lot of years. You're talking about a long, long time. So, like, for us to be cocky enough and say that our civilization is 10, 12,000 years old, like in terms of like males going from the Stone Age to, going to Mars in the next 10, 15 years in a matter of 3,000 years, 4,000 years, 6,000 years, I think that's pretty cocky of us. Yeah. That's kind of my thought about that. So, like, for me, whether it's talking about like Noah, like the whole biblical flood thing, you're talking about pretty much most civilization out there around the world, whether it's South Africa, like South America, South Africa, like Africa, like Europe, like Asia, pretty much every civilization out there based on what I know. And again, what do I know? I don't know. I just know what I feel like I've seen out there, but pretty much every civilization out there has some sort of flood event that's transpired.
Randall Carlson has some really interesting thoughts about that.
Yeah,
like, so it might be a person that if you don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to need some show notes after this. Yeah, I think I need some study notes after this. So that's kind of my thought is like, all right, so then beyond that, so if you're talking about that, then how many like civilizations were actually actively like communicating with each other prior to like some sort of point? So I mean, can you really say it was the Vikings? No, it was before that. It was like the Mycenaeans, was the Egyptians, like was it like something before that? Or are you talking about something like 10, 12,000 years old? Like you're talking about, and again, who do you really trust at this point? I think for me, it's just the more knowledge I can suck in, for me, I can formulate my opinion, but then be open to a change of it if there's some other data that's out there. But, done some core drilling, and then all of a sudden 10, 20, 30 feet down, which is, 100,000 years, they find some sort of antiquities, if you will. Like, how did that end up being 80 feet down, like somewhere in the middle of like Earth somewhere? I don't know. I mean, there's parts of Africa, or parts of India that looked like they might have been attacked by, some sort of like nuclear weapon, if you will, or it's such a slippery slope and like a rabbit hole. So, I mean, what I believe or I don't, it's interesting to talk about, just put it all out there and see kind of what's out there and at least contemplate on it. But again, it's the Earth's been around for a long, long time for us to say that this is all we had for the last 6 to 12,000 years, and that's it. I think that's kind of cocky of us.
No, I'm totally on the same page, because that's the same way when there's a lot of rabbit holes to go down. And I think there's a lot of good rabbit holes to go down. At least for me, looking into some of the stuff you've talked about, some of the things you see around the world. And, obviously I mentioned Göbekli Tepe multiple times, but that's one of the interesting ones for me, is because everyone agrees that it was intentionally buried.
Right.
Like, why are you going to bury this 12,000 year, like at least 12,000 years old? And it was intentionally buried. Like, why? Is it just because they wanted to? Like, come on. Like, there's reasons that people do these, massive undertakings, and to see some of those things and to take some of those deep dives on, to look at some of the evidence and to consider that, the experts throughout the ages have always been wrong, because that's just the knowledge they had at the time.
Right.
Until someone comes along and proves them wrong and goes, no, well, that's actually not. This is, until they get proved wrong, you're the experts.
Or that's the path of least resistance stuff, because you don't want to be challenged by the community, so you're going to go along with whatever the commonly accepted theory is.
Right. Yeah. So I think that it kind of ties into what we hear a lot. Listen to the experts.
Right.
Okay, I'm okay with listening to the experts because they have the most knowledge at this point in time. But to say that the experts can't be wrong, well, throughout history, the experts have always been wrong.
Right.
Until we learn something new.
Right.
And I think, to me, it was one of those things where it was like, it allowed me to see that and kind of open my eyes to other topics and other, things and other ideas that people had, and apply it to, my own life, in a situation where it's, keep an open mind.
Right.
You never know what you're going to find. You start digging a hole to build your house. I know this happens a lot over, especially in, the Turkey area and, Middle Eastern, where those histories have been around or those cultures have been around for so long, they start, digging to build an apartment building or something else, and they run into something.
Find
or a
tunnels
road.
that are 5,000 years old.
Right. And it's like, well, construction's got to stop because we found something here we didn't expect.
Right. Or like the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
You find something like that, and I think now we can get into the conversation of institutions and like the money flow power aspect of it, and then you have something like the Dead Sea Scrolls come out, and like how much of that does it get censored or really not fully acknowledged, that in terms of the other parts of like the Bible or the other books of it that completely get washed away, if you will, instead of actually seeing what the reality of it is. So I mean, a lot of it does come out to like who's got the most to lose, who's got the most to gain, who's got the power, who's got the money, and then
who's got the money.
Right.
Show me the money, Jerry.
Yeah, let's go. There's so many rabbit holes. That's the thing though. It's like, but I mean, yeah, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, nothing like that. I keep an open mind, like just learn, read stuff, see what's going on out there, and at the very least, it's fine to have a conversation like this, have a couple drinks, and just talk about it to where like the what if. But would anything surprise me at this point? No. Like whether it's aliens, whether it's like people being around for millions of years, like anything, just there's no. Why not? I mean, it's my mind is big versus small.
Yeah, and I think I heard it somewhat explained well to at least to trigger my mind. That was, the ant doesn't realize that that there's a third dimension.
Right.
Basically an ant, you could say. I mean, they dig. They have their colonies, and it's third dimensional. But you have an ant on the table. It doesn't recognize the things on the shelves and the ceiling around it.
Right.
That's just what it knows. And that's just its perception. So to say, you know, kind of going back to your comment, to say that we know everything and that we're just some grand being that has this perfect power and perfect knowledge, like that's a pretty bold statement.
Very.
You know, especially when we can see, you know, like monkeys are starting to use tools.
Right.
You know, like that we started to use tools once. You know, we have cell phones. We didn't have those. I remember it clicks for me because I remember when they first started coming out with pictures or camera phones. Yeah. I'm like, who the fuck wants to take pictures on a phone? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Yeah. Here we are.
Here we go.
Here we go. You know, I mean that. Yeah. And that was what in a 10-year span. You know, whatever it is. It's like, oh, when you look back on being able to remember your thoughts and the history and what you think about certain things, and then look at it 10 years later and go, oh, okay, like I see how this stuff happens now. Like,
right.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
No.
Yeah, it looked like you were going to say something.
No, I was just agreeing, listening, man.
I mean, I remember when, like, the phones came. I'm sorry, just when the phones came out, like, the smaller the better. I don't know if you remember, like, I mean, they used to have, like, little phones that were like size of, like, lighters. Like, that was the greatest thing. Like, look at this, my little pea-size, like,
and then here's phone. Like the Galaxy 20 Note Plus 6. Like,
here's my iPad. Like, I can make my phone calls from. Yeah. No, things change. But, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just, you know, the path of least resistance. I mean, if there's organizations, whether it's financially, whether it's power, whatever some sort of, you know, the hierarchy is, for anybody to go against the grain, you're going to be an outcast unless your voice is loud enough and then you have enough data and then it starts catching on. So whether it's the historical aspect of it, whether it's somebody talking about any sort of financial theories or politics or anything like that, it's just, you know, they're all conspiracies until, you know, one comes true until it's proven true.
Was it Galileo that they,
no.
you know, in prison for saying that the world was round?
Yeah. A lot of people are like, or Tesla, Nikola Tesla, like at the turn of the century. I mean, just talking about all that kind of stuff. And like now we're living off a lot of the technology that he came up with, and the dude died broke. I mean, to think they came across my newsfeed today, like today or in the last, let's say 30 days, like, you know, just Elon Musk is like the richest person in the world and Tesla died broke. You know, I just think about that, but like he's using his name and, you know, some of the technologies that are out there. So,
yeah. And now he's sending people to space.
It's
on top of it.
So crazy. And a hell of a lot cheaper than NASA. A lot cheaper than NASA. Yeah. Bezos just did his, you know, with, what is it, blue tortoise or something like that. I mean, they just did their, you know, Earth flight and what have you. So, I mean, they're
did he? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Yeah. Bezos has. Yeah. I mean, Virgin Galactic, or Virgin, like, I mean, they do from Virgin. They have like a space company. Obviously, Elon Musk has one. Jeff Bezos, he's got some sort of orbital.
I think anybody with legit money is they're investing in space.
Why not? Yeah, that's the next frontier. So, I mean,
well, I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about it once before too, where he said, you know, a lot of the inventions that we've had in the past 20, 30 years came from like the intentions. They needed something in space to do this project. I think the one simple one was battery power tools.
Okay.
That came from space because they needed something that would work in space.
Sure.
That, I mean, they can't just plug into the wall and, you know, go and do a spacewalk. They needed a battery controlled, you know, portable, you know, power tools. And it was like
necessity is the mother of all inventions.
There you go. Yeah.
There's a funny story I think about the Russians and like the American like space program. Like the Americans, we were trying to come out with some sort of space pen, and the Russians like, fucking use a pencil. Instead of spending millions and millions of dollars on some sort of crazy pen, like, here, just use a fucking pencil.
That sounds like something very American, dude. We just completely overlooked this simple answer.
What was it? What movie was that with I think it was the one with I can't remember.
Space Cowboys or Armageddon?
No, I think it was Armageddon, where they go to the space station. The guy from Russia's up in the space station. He's like, I tell you, touch nothing. You Americans, bunch of cowboys. Always screwing everything up. Like, it's like, just sometimes the simple answers right there in front of you. Right. Did you notice he brought up aliens? I didn't have to do it again. That's the second time in a row.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Well, I always bring it up.
Probably goes back. Well, that and Göbekli Tepe and the Matrix. That's why I'm always like, yeah, you guys should be having these conversations. Yeah.
Well, and
I appreciate them. I just don't feel like I appreciate them as much as you do. So,
well, for the longest time, I would make little comments, and Tony's like, "This dude's," I could tell he was just like, "This dude's fucking crazy." And I'm like, no,
So
like
me or you?
me. And so if you listen to like, I don't necessarily have crazy thoughts about their practical theories that theoretically, you know, this could be a thing. Like,
But why not though? It's not like you live out here with like a tinfoil hat on. I mean, you know what I mean? It's
not
just
usually.
Is it possible or not? I mean, there's trillions of planets out there. It's an infinite
Galaxies
universe.
sure.
Yeah, like everything. So why can't it be? Can it be? Yeah, maybe. Why not? If not, whatever it is. But at least, again, fun to talk about it and at least to contemplate.
Well, have you ever heard the David Fravor story?
I don't think so.
He's a Navy. He was a Navy fighter pilot.
Okay.
He was a commander for like 23 years or something like that, and he's public about it, but he's very, very. You listen to him; it's not a guy you think that is, you know, a
Looney Tunes.
UFO.
Yeah.
You know, UFO guy. But he says that he saw one. He talked about
What year was this, or like what?
what was this? This was late 90s, I
Okay.
think, early 2000s, something like that. But they were doing long story short, they were doing some training out in the Pacific.
Okay.
And they were going out to do their training, and they're flying around. And when they get to whatever command post they were working out of, the people said, "Hey, like, hold on, you got to pause your training. We want you to go check something out." There's these things that showed up on the radar. They've been showing up for the past few weeks, whatever. We see them all the time. We don't really know what they are.
Okay.
Just go check it out. So he said him and his wing person, they flew out there and they saw what they call the Tic Tac. I don't know if you heard the Tic Tac. So they saw this thing that looks like a giant Tic Tac. So it was like 30, 40 feet long.
Okay.
Essentially like hovering
Just
over.
it's like kind of like oblong object.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all it was. There's no markings, no, you
What
know,
flavor
wing.
was it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, orange,
Yeah. Hopefully not orange, because
Yeah.
those ones suck.
Yeah, no, just mint. Give it a
Yeah,
mint.
just yeah. So he saw this thing. Basically, he said it was essentially hovering right over the ocean. Because what they saw is it said the ocean was super calm that day, so there was no white caps or anything like that. So but they saw white caps. Essentially, it's kind of a disturbance in the ocean.
Okay.
So they're like, all right, maybe like what's that? And then that's when as they got closer, they saw this thing hovering right up over the ocean, and it seemed like there was something underneath the water.
Okay.
So he's like, well, I'm gonna go, get a closer look, be cautious, but you know, get a closer look. So as he got closer, he says it seemed like the thing knew he was there.
Okay.
And then instantly, it was just gone. And they're
Like phased out or
Like
flew
just-
away type of thing, or
just gone,
Okay.
just gone.
Just translucent,
Yeah.
transparent.
So he's
Okay.
like, just gone. And he's
Okay.
like, all right. He's like, well, what the hell is that? And he's like, I can't find this thing. That we're like, didn't see it. And then literally a couple seconds later, their command post or whatever said, hey, we just pinged that thing at your original location.
Okay.
And it was like, he thought, whatever, is what it is. Like they went on and did their training, and they never saw it. And then I think it was a couple weeks later, some of the people that he knew were doing out trainings again, and they actually got it on like one of their HUD displays.
Okay.
They recorded it. He was able to record it. So that's the Tic Tac. Like people search the Tic Tac video.
Okay.
It's not actually. It's the same. Commander David Fravor says it's the same, event, same area. It was just part of a different part of his group that actually recorded the video.
Okay.
But he seems very, 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 credible person.
Right.
You don't get to be a commander in the Navy and a fighter pilot for 25 years being a nut job.
Right.
You
Well, a
know,
lot of that kind of stuff
typically.
is like, what does he have to gain from saying something like that?
Right.
So a lot of times, like when things like that come out for me, it's like, what does somebody have to gain? So I mean, there was, I think, what was it? Israeli, I think, or like that there's some sort of higher up Israeli commanding officer or something like that. He was talking about like just aliens are out there. So it's like, for me, it's like, what does a person like that have to gain? So I mean,
Right.
okay, if there's a movie or a book or coming like that, I'm like, all right, maybe. But I mean, if somebody literally has nothing to gain from it, then like, why even say something? Because you know how the world's going to react.
Right.
But then even beyond that, though, like now you talk about aliens, or then maybe you're talking about maybe like either like other dimensions as well.
Yeah.
So now that there's like a whole conversation that can kind of evolve from that part of it, like in terms of aliens and other dimensions, and we can get into the multi-dimensional, like the infinite universe type of scenario of kind of what's going on out there and what's truly out there and what are we really.
Right. Well, that's what to tie all that in together. When you hear, for me, is when I started to tie all right. Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a pretty respected astrophysicist, I believe.
Sure.
He's
a smart dude. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty smart dude. He talks about how there's, these different dimensions. He's like a fourth dimension. Like I think that's where I got the ant,
Right.
thing from, where he says the ant doesn't know that there's a third dimension. Well, how do we know that we don't?
We're the ant. Yeah.
Yeah, that we're the ant in that scenario. We just don't realize there's another dimension there. Or, there's lots of planets out there. There's a lot of space out there. The possibility of that. And then you look at, and this is where it gets a little weird. A theory of mine, Tony. I don't think I've told you this one before. He's just like, Jesus, here we go.
Far away, Fred.
While we're connecting all these things and tying into, like the mass catastrophes that have happened to the Earth over the years.
Oh God, I'm gonna like you. Yeah, let's go.
So you look at places like Göbekli Tepe that were
Right.
maybe it was intentionally buried because they know that this happens.
Right.
We go through the Taurid meteor
Or
stream
something was coming, or something. Yeah.
Right. So they go, okay, like we need to, and they always tie in like astral, alignments.
Alignments, sure.
So like that's kind of weird. Like the pyramids, like, all right, maybe it's coincidence.
No, but you can look. There's an Orion Belt type of pyramid structure in China, Africa, and then South America.
Right.
And then you put those three together. Now it's Orion's Belt, like throughout the world. So I mean, yeah. But I mean, I think a lot of now we get into religions. I mean, it's a whole separate matter. But yeah, I mean, how do we explain the unexplainable? Or people back in the day were bored. They can either go farm, sleep with their wife at night, or go look at the stars. I mean, that there's only so many things you can do, and you just start thinking about things out there.
Yeah, and just makes you, to me, all those coincidences don't make you question
Right.
and go, okay, well, what if?
Right.
What if this? What if that? What if, a comet did hit the ice cap during the ice age and poured all this water out on the earth and caused a giant flood?
Sure.
And then, all right, where does that water go? Well, it's got to stay around. So now we don't have nearly as much land as we used to.
Right. Or it shifted.
Or it shifted, yeah. Or, okay.
Yeah,
so,
part that was exposed before is not, and then vice versa.
right. So what's in the water that we don't know about? A lot.
We don't know 98% of what's underwater.
Right. So just so to say that, all right, this, if you even consider the, lost city of Atlantis, and you're batshit crazy. Well, really? Because there's a lot of water out there. And if we know that we've had these catastrophes, then maybe there's a lot out there we don't know. Or maybe there's a lot in the water that people are saying, what was it? Just a couple weeks ago, there was, I think it wasn't in San Diego. I just laugh because
San Diego.
but there was
Wales.
yeah.
In German, a whale's vagina.
But there were reports a couple weeks ago of people saw multiple lights disappearing into the ocean.
Yeah.
All right. So you know what? Maybe those people that built Göbekli Tepe are the aliens, and they're just living in the ocean, and they're like the Israeli and former military guys, they're just waiting for us to get our shit together.
Right. I mean, would that surprise me in 2021? No. I mean, I feel like maybe just me, but I feel like in the last 6, 7, 8 months, there's been so much more alien talk, and just there's so much stuff that's coming out there now. Is that kind of the world's way or the government's way to kind of put it out there, maybe get us prepped before, hey, aliens, here we are. I don't know. Who knows?
Who
but
knows? It is interesting to think about.
But there's so much stuff out there. I mean, there's so many different civilization out there. I mean, for me, a lot of the fascinating stuff, obviously the Middle East, but then also South America, in terms of I think Pumapunku or something like that, or Pumapunku, parts of Peru and certain parts out there that are just, you're looking at these different structures that a multi-layered kind of same thing with Egypt, in terms of there's a foundation, a base layer, and then something on top of it. So we're how old are these? Nobody really knows. But what true archaeologist is going to put their name out there and be yeah, this is 20,000 years old. People don't want to do that, because now you're looked at as
because they get ostracized.
Yeah, they get ostracized, but until they don't, or until they're actually proven right. But that's very far and few in between. So, and then there's certain structures, whether it's some sort of tooling marks or whatever that is that's out there. At the end of the day, it's just, I don't know. Again, I like to keep an open mind. Or the Amazon, it's just such a big place. Joe Rogan did a great podcast with somebody, I think 6 months ago. One of his guests was talking about there's going to be so much stuff that can come out of the Amazon. I mean, you're talking about just such a huge, dense jungle, if you will. Don't we have the technology to fly over, do some sort of ground penetrating radar to actually see what's going on?
I think they're talking about doing
stuff like that.
I think they're talking about taking LiDAR out.
LiDAR. I mean, how great would that be? Just how do you as a person not get maybe just me, just get excited about just parts.
I mean, I do.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, just find things out about our past. I mean, you know, you, Tony, me, myself, like we right now, like me sitting in the seat is me based on 10 million, 100 million decisions that we've made in our life, 1 billion decisions. Like literally there's,
But here we are.
right.
somehow.
And here we are.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, it's now that goes into like the multi-universe theory, like the infinite amount of like universes out there to where I chose not to come here today. So now there's a different universe, or something happened, or I stopped for gas on the way over here. So now there's another universe, or even the fact that, you know, I would have pulled over to the side of the road to like look at something. Like you're talking about like millions or infinite universes out there that are based on decisions that we make at any given point in time. So why not? Yeah. Okay. But I think something else too, I think interesting that you talked about before, like in terms of like, you know, us being batteries, like being plugged in, being like not being plugged in, like, I mean, scientifically speaking, you know, energy is not created or lost, it's transferred.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's energy that's out there. So, I mean, yeah, somebody gets unplugged. So, whether you're talking about the human soul or something like that, is the human soul energy, like, where does that go? Like, somebody dies, you know, you get into like all sorts of conversation, like what actually happens like after death and things like that. But, like, yeah, just it's not created. I mean, it's a finite kind of balance, if you will. Just things get transferred.
Yeah, and I think too, like you go back to the expert talk where, you know, we've mentioned it before, where, you know, anti-gravity and antimatter and dark matter, and scientists are like, oh yeah, those are things. What are they? Yeah, we don't know.
Right.
So
Until
how much?
they know,
Yeah. So how much of an expert are you on
Right.
science? Like, you know, like, okay, like I'm going to listen to what you have to say, but when you ask somebody a question, well, what is this? Well, will this exist? What is it? I don't know.
Right.
Well, what's Eric Weinstein say?
About.
Oh, quantum physics.
Oh yeah, if you think you know, you don't know. Yeah, we'll pause real quick. We have a decent table, but it's we're piecing it together. I mean, it used to be this. This was like the entire room, like right here,
Yeah.
and then
Hey, you make it work.
Yeah, we did a few episodes out of the.
It's not a
garage.
couch, so
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
It's not a casting
the
couch.
casting
Yeah.
call couch.
Yeah.
There's no fluffers in here.
No,
A little co-ed, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're okay. If you brought a blacklight in here, I think you'd be okay for the most part.
Allegedly. Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
There's no ostriches in here.
I don't even remember what we were talking about, but
All sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing was off limits, yeah.
yeah.
We're just missing sex and politics at this point. So we talk about conspiracy theories or history, religion. So
That's true.
what do you want to talk about? Yeah.
I mean, we talked about aliens. I'm as happy as I can be.
Yeah. Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I think we ended on the whole, you know, we don't know, because it's just, there's so much out there that we don't know.
Yeah. Why not keep an open mind though? I mean, why not?
I think.
I think you have to, though. I mean, if you don't, I feel like that's almost foolhardy. Like you said, to think about the universes and the galaxies and all the different planets. And I mean,
What we don't know about our own.
yeah, I guess how could you not think that
Especially,
maybe there
yeah.
isn't something else out there? I mean, why wouldn't there be if there's us? Like you said, I think that's, you know, kind of silly to go, we're it. That's it.
I mean, you know, I guess you can look at it from the point of view of how much does religion play into that, and then which is a whole separate rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, because was religion just it started out with the story, but then the politicians came along and realized that you could control people with
Right.
religion. So then it's like, oh, got a good money making scheme here.
Correct. Let's go.
Yeah, you know.
But then also you limit the scope of like God, Earth, and we're the end all be all. There's nothing else out there. Or if you take religion out of it, then I think it kind of opens up your mind a little bit. Or I guess there's so many different ways of looking at it. Does
Yeah.
that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'll even there's I listened to a podcast with Terry Virts. I can't believe I just remembered his name off the top of my head, but he was he's an
Astronaut.
yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of Terry Virts. So he spent
Again, show notes. Yeah.
yeah.
Show notes.
Yeah, so he spent what was it? It was like
200 days.
200 plus days in space.
Okay.
And it was like 20 days, and then he spent 200 days straight in space. And
Like, what do you feel like when you get back to the planet, like with like the 0 G's and like the gravity and stuff?
Yeah, well,
like
he
that?
said it
It's
wasn't.
got to be rough.
Yeah, he said it wasn't terrible. He said it was a couple days that he felt like, I can't remember if he like described it as like vertigo kind of,
Okay.
but just kind of, he just felt off. But after about a week or two, he was fine.
It was okay. Okay.
But I think part of that is their protocols and the exercises and stuff
Yeah,
they
yeah.
do on
The
the space
treadmills,
station.
everything,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
Okay.
all the things they have, like it keeps them.
But still, I mean, I don't know if they're like, if maybe Tony, but like how much like muscle atrophy actually takes place? Like what's the actual process of like metabolizing like proteins and things like that in terms of like how much muscle you're able to maintain versus lose like when you're out there. So
if they didn't do those exercises, I think they said it would have been very significant.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
So they had everything kind of planned into that program, like you said, with the treadmills, with some weight bearing stuff, and I think it would have been extremely significant.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think the diet too. They make sure because
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things is what bone density.
Yep.
That they
Right.
end up
Yep.
losing the bone density because they don't have that full gravity.
Yeah, I mean, you think of osteoporosis, and I mean, you got to do weight bearing exercises,
Right.
otherwise
yeah,
that and hormones. So
Hormones.
Yeah.
Shoot them up with some tea.
yeah. There you go. Some jacked astronauts.
I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were on something.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
Oh well, he even talked about it. I think he said that they'll take something to stay awake. They'll take something to go to sleep, and depending on the times. But he says like they'll give him a bunch like when because I think Terry Virts was a pilot too.
Yeah, Vyvanse and Provigil, and then Ambien and Lunesta.
Oh, nice.
So,
yeah,
Yeah,
good times.
he says he
Just add some
typically-
vodka to it and you're good to go.
I was gonna say. Well, I think he stayed away from the Ambien as much as he could because, like, especially like because he said like when you have to do like spacewalks.
Yeah. Do you want to sleepwalk when you're out
Yeah,
there?
he's like, yeah, I don't. He's like, I want to be as clear as I possibly can,
Right.
get a good night's sleep, but not be, up
Right.
like doing weird shit in the middle of the night.
Right.
But he was a fighter pilot too, I think, at
Okay.
one point, and he said that like there were times where they just call him go pills, that he would show up and they'd be like, all right, we're going on this mission here, take these pills, and he's like, okay, and he's like, I didn't really ask, like I just kind of, well, it's the military, I'm sure they got.
Well, I mean, how much was like, World War II in Germany? I mean, they're on meth. So, I mean,
Yeah.
super soldiers,
Yeah.
but that's what it was. I mean, that's how they just kept going. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit of meth, a little bit of PCP.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's go kill some people. Yeah. But I mean, I think there's a number of astronauts that said they've seen things out there they cannot explain. So,
Well, he said that he'd never seen anything.
okay.
But he's a Christian, so that's what it was. It was the religion piece of it.
All right. Now you tie it all together. Good.
Yeah, that's
Thank
what
you.
it was. That's what it was. Sorry, I
took you a
forget
minute.
sometimes. I get down some
Yeah.
weird side paths.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. He said that, and he was like, "Well, how do you reconcile that? Like, have you seen difficulty reconciling like science and religion and together?" And he's like, "Well, no." He's like, "For me, he's like, it just science is we go on what we can prove and how things are, and just because if I believe that somebody created it all, it doesn't change the science behind it, So
Right.
I think so for me, like when I was younger, I had a bout where my family was very religious.
Okay.
And so it took me, and it was in a very impressionable part of, my age. So it took me a long time to kind of reconcile, that science and religion and,
They can coexist.
they can. Yeah. I'm not so much of a religious person now, because I, went real opposite at one point, like
Okay.
most, good Christian boys do. I make a joke, but it was always hard to reconcile that, hey, this thing is still a solid. The oxygen we're breathing is still a gas. Like there's still science in all
Right.
these things. So like, it kind of goes back to the, talking about people and conflicts and, we can coexist in the same worlds. They don't have to be one thing or another.
Absolutely.
It can mesh together. Because if it didn't, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not religious, if you will, but I mean, I believe in a higher power, higher being, but I believe in science, and I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there to be explained and not to be explained, and I mean, but that's part of the fun is actually just living through life.
someone that believes in dualities.
Yeah,
Is that what I just
duality.
heard?
Oh.
Multiple things can
Oh, yeah.
exist in multiple
Yeah.
places.
Right? Why not?
It doesn't just
Yeah.
have to be simplified to one and one alone.
No.
Yeah,
because
for
that
sure.
gets a lot of people killed. That's
Yeah.
the problem, though.
Yeah,
Like when
no
you have
shit.
such a finite, like bird's eye view of something, that's to me that's dangerous. That's why I try to live an open mind. I mean, anything's possible. I mean, Is your religion better than mine? I don't know. God bless you. I mean, that's fine. Like, I believe what I believe. You believe what you believe. You know, Mazel Tov, or L'chaim, or whatever it is, or Vaya con Dios, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
It's just,
isn't that Pascal's wager? Isn't that what it's called? Like you believe in your God, I believe in mine. At the end of the day,
let's have
we
a
both
drink.
die. Yeah, we both die, and wherever we go, we go.
Right.
And hopefully, you're in a good place, and I'm in a
Yeah,
good place.
let's break bread and have a good time. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. So I mean, yeah, and I think that's just my whole thing about it. Just why again pigeonhole yourself into like anything? Because again, there's anything that you're 100% like convinced upon that is not science or like pure black and whiteness. I think that's dangerous. It's just you can have your beliefs, but then have an open mind. And
Did he just say anti-echo chamber? Is that what I just heard?
Yeah, basically.
God, I like you so much more.
what is that? You got to tell me about that.
Fire away, bro.
What,
That's
echo chambers?
Yeah. I'm serious. Yeah, you look at me like I have a third.
No,
eye.
no.
I got yelled at last time for talking about echo chambers.
Fire away, man.
Cut his mic off. Yeah.
No, fire away. These are words.
Yeah.
There's the 2020 vocabulary, which I don't love, but it's there. So, dude, explain it real quick. But I was loving that, man. What he was saying. So
Yeah, no. So to echo chamber, people, that's a word that's being thrown around a lot. Not nearly as much as unprecedented.
or nuance,
Or nuance.
or
Yeah.
the new norm.
Yeah, no, fine.
The new normal? No.
Oh, that's
yeah,
the thing.
that's garbage.
Yeah,
new
so-
normal. No.
But I think echo chambers is really it's been made extremely prevalent to see it. This year is where like the very opposite of what you're saying is you have this idea, and what people do is they surround themselves with other people that have the same idea, and that's it must be right. It's like
Right.
Facebook, their algorithms. Well, it must be right because this is what everyone else is saying.
right.
Well, no, you haven't listened to, the other 7.49999 trillion people or billion people that are on this earth.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of different ideas out there, and to just surround yourself with the people that or the people that hold the same beliefs as you. It gets real dangerous. Like you said, that's
No
what
doubt.
kills people.
No doubt. Literally. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, literally. I mean, but in both left, right. I mean, you name it. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Religions, whatever,
Politics, whatever it is. Yeah.
Anti-religions,
Yeah.
whatever.
You don't got to be anything specific. It's
Yeah,
just, when you believe in something so much without keeping an open mind, that kills people. I mean, it's very dangerous.
Yeah, I think this year has been a really good opportunity to allow your mind to be plastic,
Yeah.
or at least to attempt to get there. Because if you can't see, the strife that's going on just with people and their ideas, and I don't have to tell you,
Right.
maybe because you're living in a cabin in the middle of the woods, and that sounds great, but
It does sound great.
Yeah, I was gonna say, sign us all
sounds
up.
awesome.
I just need a little river or lake or something like that. Do some trout fishing.
Yeah,
And we're good to go.
absolutely.
That's all I'm missing. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Give me a fire. Give me some, I don't know, give me some protein and let's
Some
go.
books.
Yeah. Something,
Give me some books. I'll take a bow.
Yeah.
Get my protein.
I'm all in. That's one thing. I've never done any hunting. Like, I'd love to go hunting. Like, I love fishing. It's, I don't care about cold, hot, anything like that. Like, one time I went fishing the Niagara River. It was such a unique experience. Like, went down there, it was below freezing. So, I mean, we're
Right.
in a little boat dinghy type thing, but I mean, we're maxing out, but it was so cold. Like, you were reeling up your line, and like, you had to put the tip in, just the tip in your mouth. So, like, just to thaw out the line. But it was such a unique experience. But I mean, it's, I'd love to go hunting, but
Yeah, I've gone fishing.
Yeah.
I'm not much of a fisherman,
okay.
or angler or whatever.
Or angler, yeah. Masturbator.
I could do that.
Efficiently, yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy it, but like, I guess I never did it a whole lot. It's weird because I grew up on the water.
Okay.
Not like on an ocean or anything like that, but my family, we used to go boating on, at the lake, skiing, stuff like that. It was more for sport.
Water sports, yeah.
Yeah, and I did, fishing. They'd throw a bobber with a worm on it, throw it out there. But that was about my fishing experience until I got with my wife now. Her family, her dad's he's an outdoorsman for sure.
Okay.
Like, he grew up in West Virginia. Like, literally, from the stories he tells, a lot of all of what they ate as far as like meat wise goes is they either had it on the farm,
Okay.
or they hunted it.
You eat what you kill.
Yeah, and that
okay.
was what they would spend their days. Him and his brothers would spend their days running through the woods with bows, getting deer for venison and using that meat and everything. So
How many people would be fucked if they had to do that right now?
Oh, all
know-
of them,
you know
most
what
of
I'm
them,
saying?
the vast
Right.
majority.
Right.
Yeah, we talked a little bit
Yeah.
about it in our last podcast where, we had a guy that was ex-military and Secret Service, and
Nice.
my brother-in-law, he loves hunting.
He's
as well.
legit. Okay.
Yeah, and they two different guys. My brother-in-law, who's the hunter, and then the other guy is the
They're both
military
legit.
guy. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And it was basically like, maybe 10% of the people could like. Where do you
I
get
don't think, not even 10%.
maybe like I'm talking worldwide.
Oh, world. Yeah. Okay.
Like we're.
Yeah.
Where are you getting your food? Like,
Right.
what are you going to eat? If everything, if you
Take this deer's ass crack will not take my credit card. Like I want a piece of your butt. Yeah, it's not taking it. What do I do now? Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I do a little bit. I was never a hunter either.
Okay.
But I like bow hunting.
Yeah.
There's just something about, the only times I've gone gun hunting, which I've gone a lot, but I've never shot my gun. I've never shot my gun at a deer ever. I usually just go to drink beer that night at the cabin and,
Okay.
and
And shoot guns. Yeah.
Yeah, for the shit
Right.
talking.
Yeah.
But I like bow hunting because there's just something special about it. It's
Absolutely.
it's still, people say, oh, it's not fair.
What's not fair?
Yeah, that you're shooting a deer, because you're an ape. You're not an apex predator. You don't need to whatever.
Okay.
Some people will make that argument that we shouldn't be eating animals at all.
Okay. That's fine.
Some people
That's
make
fine.
that argument.
Sure.
And okay, that's
You can
fine.
argue anything you want. That's
Right,
fine.
exactly.
I'll listen to it. Right. Why
Right,
not?
yeah.
Yeah. Let's go.
But
I tried a vegan diet for like 7 days. I gained like 4 pounds of fat. I'm like, this is not for me. So
what were you eating? Doritos? That's what I love. They're
No.
like, oh, I'm a vegan. They're just like, giant pack of Doritos. I'm like,
I ate like pea pasta and peanut butter and rice and things like that, beans. And I'm like, oh my God, I can.
Probably cranked up your estradiol beyond the imaginable amount.
I'm like, I think I had 120, 130 grams of protein a day. I'm like, what am I doing here? But I mean, probably 400 or 500 grams of carbs a day. So I mean, I even tried to balance it out. I just couldn't do it. So I mean,
it's difficult.
yeah, but I think maybe going back to what Tony and I do, for some people, vegan, vegetarian, that's great.
Yeah.
I've done this long enough. I've talked to enough people. For some, being vegetarian's great, vegan's great, Mediterranean's great, keto, carnivore, you name it. It's just, what's your body type? What's your body good with? Some are more tolerant of cheese than others, or dairy. Some are more tolerant of meat than others. It's just, hey, eat what you got to eat. But if you're going to judge me based on what I'm eating, then go F yourself.
Yeah, and you got some more problems
Yeah,
than what
that's
I'm eating.
correct. Yeah.
I would imagine your genes play something into that too.
Oh yeah, it goes
We've
back to
talked
the
about
tribal, the evolution,
Yep.
how people moved around the world and what they had to eat.
the
what
milk
their-
and the tolerance to
Yeah.
lactose and things
I agree.
like that.
Yeah. If you have like if you have a Mediterranean based like background, you're probably better with like seafood and some of the other stuff. If you're like more African, you're better off like seafood, some other things like that. If you're from mountains of Ireland or parts of Europe, you're probably better with meat and potatoes or what have you. So I mean,
cheese.
yeah, I mean,
Give me my dairy product.
Yeah.
Give me my cheese.
I love cheese. Yeah, no, but a lot of it. Yeah, I mean, how yeah, I mean, there's definitely. I mean, how much genetics actually plays into your body type, your composition, like what your body can handle, stuff like that too. I mean, I do believe in like the whole seasonality aspect of it. Like, do I follow it? No, I'd love to, but I'm a gluttonous mother effer at times. So I like how stuff tastes all often. But I mean, I mean, it's, seeds, they're not available, 365 days a year. I mean, certain things are just not available throughout the year round. So, I mean, there's definitely, conceptually speaking, it makes sense in terms of like what you're eating, when you're eating, in terms of like your ancestors when they had access to something. Like, whether it was just, for a month, couple months at a time, just meat and fat, protein and fat. All right. So there's that part of it. And then every so often, apple ripens in August and September. Let me have some apples for a couple of months, things like that. Like, now most of the stuff that we're eating is, picked, when it's green and delivered to us in a truck 3, 4, 5 days later. I think I saw somewhere where your average orange has like 30% of the vitamin C that it had like 30 years ago. So, I mean, just the quality of the foods that we're eating is just not the same now. So I think you put it all together and yeah, like I like the idea, or the kind of like, maybe Tony can talk about this. We can sidetrack and then come back to it. But like, I don't know how much you know about like the elimination diet, like in terms of like having that part of it, like in terms of like what your body can handle, what can it not. So what do you think about the elimination diet?
Oh, so you're just saying like, hey, you eat this food, it doesn't tolerate it well, don't eat it again.
Yeah, in essence, like stepping back and like introducing like one thing at a time. like whether it's protein, whether it's cheese, whether it's broccoli, whether it's tomatoes, carrots, bananas, apples, oranges, things like that. So,
well, obviously, you know, I'm a big proponent of introducing one thing at a time because then we can control it and we can see what actually happens.
exactly. From a medical point of view, 100%.
100%. From a dietary standpoint, I love it too.
Yeah.
You know, personally, me, things that I can't tolerate, I'll either avoid them or, you know, just I'll eat them in moderation.
Prepare yourself for the next day.
Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't you though? Like if it's going to affect you in an adverse fashion, like let's not do that. Like there's other things out there that we can, you know, consume, and so yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think a lot of people they never even get to the point of realizing that though.
No, we're thinking about it.
Yeah, no. I talked to a buddy the other day, and he used to work a really physical job. Now works not so physical job. He ate like shit.
He's like, I'm fat now. What's
Always.
going on? Yeah.
He gained a bunch of weight, and he's like, man, you know, I stopped.
I don't get it.
He's like, I stopped eating. Well, now he just recently, he's like, yeah, I stopped eating fast food. He's like, man, I'm down like 7 pounds. He's like, and I feel really good. I'm like, yeah, dude, I told you, you're eating shit. Like, but sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think along those lines. So, like, just something I've been looking to more, like the whole carnivore, like nose to tail type of diet. So, like for me, yeah, I love carbs. You know, sugars, carbs. It's like crack. I mean, it is a drug. I mean, they've done studies in terms of showing what people's like brains look like when they eat a good amount of carbs. I mean, lights up like cocaine. So, I mean, same thing. But like, so I have like some psoriasis or like some rash like on my hands at times. So if I have more carbs than I probably should, or like more sugars, like I will have like a you know, an itchy patch develop on my arms.
But you limit those sugars and it goes away.
100%.
It can't fuel
right
that when you don't have any of the sugars because that's what fuels it.
And that's the kind of stuff. But it's like just being aware of your body. So I think more of us maybe need to like step back for a second and just be aware of like, hey, this is what I ate yesterday. This is how I feel today. Maybe I shouldn't have that. Whether it's eggs, whether it's broccoli, whether it's cheese, whether it's meat, whatever it is. Again, some people do great on a vegetarian diet.
True.
I mean, there's a number of patients that we have that are vegans or vegetarians. They're doing amazing. There's people who are carnivores. They're doing amazing. It's just, I don't know. I think just keeping an open mind and seeing what your body does and how it does and react to it and just kind of evaluating accordingly. So.
Yeah, and something I tell our patients too, and I actually don't even know if we've talked about this, and you might employ this too, but it's kind of keeping a journal.
Yeah.
You know, when people have problems, I'm like, write them down. Like, see, like, what are you consuming? What's going on? Are there stressful events? Are you traveling? Like, are you taking any new medications? Like, write it down so that we can go back and compare it, and you have something to.
Yeah, the stress factors, whatever that might be.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think too. I mean, obviously, I don't necessarily do this, but I think it's a good point of writing something down when you have. Do you want another water? We have. Okay. Writing something down while it happens, so that way, when the problem arises, you can go back and go, okay, what's the last 6 hours? What's the last 12 hours? What's the last 72 hours of my life looked like?
Just being self-aware.
Yeah, and people, I don't think people aren't doing that. They're just not self-aware at all. Perfect example, my buddy talking about, oh man, I feel a lot better when I don't eat fast food. Yeah, because it's crap, man.
Yeah.
It's not even food. He's like, he's like, well, I don't think there's not necessarily a good protein source. I'm like, it's not the protein, it's just the way the food is constructed. Like, and that's exactly the way I said it. And I think that's very intentional. Like, fast food is constructed. Like, it's not
correct
grown.
To get you addicted to it.
Yeah, and it's not food. It's a food substitute or a food
Substitute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. And so much, I mean, I don't know, you guys, like, I mean, you buy some bread off the shelf, right? Like something that's like pre-made. Couple of times, like I looked at the bread like 2-3 weeks after like its expiration date, and it still looks fresh.
No mold.
Yeah.
No
Well,
mold.
No mold. Zero mold.
Yeah,
I'm
we had
like,
that
oh my
conversation.
God.
We had that conversation with Becky
Did
Curie,
you?
and she's a nutrition
Dietitian.
Ooh, I almost said nutritionist. So
Fire from
dietitian,
Alaska and beat
She'll
your ass,
find it,
bro.
yeah.
Don't make
Yeah.
that
But she's a
mistake.
dietitian. We had that conversation. It was like, you know what? If it sits on my counter for a week and it's not molding, maybe we should ask some questions about that.
Might as well have a chunk of plastic.
Yeah, like eat a
same thing.
Twinkie. Like,
Right.
you know,
Correct.
like-
And it's scary. And that's the kind of stuff that, we put into our bodies, like we teach our kids. And
shit in, shit out.
correct. There's a lot of stuff out there that just, I don't know. Yeah, but how much of that at the end of the day, like, do we have to just take responsibility for a lot of it. Like, we need to do our research. We need to be aware. Like, something like that happens. Like, all right, I'm not buying that again. So, I mean, instead of like buying the same thing. So, again, at some point, you keep making the same mistake over and over again, it becomes a choice. You know, it's not, it's no longer an accident. It's no longer it is. I mean,
did this man just say personal responsibility
No,
and accountability? Is
We
that what I
can't
just
have
heard?
any of that or meritocracy.
Oh my gosh.
None of that
how
shit.
dare you?
How dare you?
Well, I was going to say something. Now you totally threw me off. I don't remember. What
Sorry.
It's all right.
You hit my keywords right there. I
Yeah,
love it.
it's just hitting his buttons.
I'm looking at the note cards in front of you. I'm reading it off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nah, there's no note cards.
Yeah,
Just bourbon. Bourbon and whiskey. Those are our note cards.
And ice.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Not very much.
That self-responsibility of knowing what you're doing and knowing, you know, obviously we joke shit in, shit out, and what you're putting in your body and sitting here drinking bourbon. But at the same time, it's like you have to be, you know what? It's like you have to be willing to accept what you're doing. And if you understand that, and all right, you're a grown ass human being, you do what you want, but don't blame anybody else for you know, the poison you're putting in your body, or you know, whatever happens to you, because you made your choices.
It's an educated decision based on the facts that I have, and that's what I'm doing. So, like, I'm with what I'm doing right now. I'm okay doing that, but I know what it's doing, what's the time frame of it's doing.
Right.
But that's my job as an individual to learn what it does and how it affects my body and what impact it has short and long term.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to and Tony and I had a little conversation over text at one point that I would say for our conversations, it got a little contentious. As far as our conversations go, but it was a doctor that was on his podcast. Not doctor. He's a
No, he's a doctor.
He's a doctor.
You can call him that. He's a PhD doctor. He's not a medical doctor or a DO.
but
so.
he's
But isn't Joe Biden's wife a doctor too?
yeah. Well, wasn't she like an honorary doctor or something?
Correct. Yeah, she's an honorary PhD. Dr.
Yeah,
Joe
so was
Biden.
Bill Cosby was too.
Correct.
We saw that. We got him.
Immediate bad taste in my mouth right now. Please continue.
Yeah.
I mean,
so this guy was some kind of chemical neuro something or other, but he
Psychology and I think neuroscience. Is what he's-
yeah. But he's a proponent for legalizing drugs.
Okay.
All drugs.
All of them.
All
Okay.
drugs.
Like he even said, like he talked about for quite a while how he recreationally does heroin.
Okay.
In different ways, but whatever. But he recreationally does these drugs
For what purpose? Or
because he wants to.
Okay. Just to have a good time, or like experiment or a science?
Both.
Okay.
All
All the above.
Yeah, all the above. And it's not. And he said that there are people out there that can't handle certain things. And he says like he won't. He doesn't drink, and he doesn't do something else, but he'll.
He'll shoot up some crack. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't shoot up. He snorts it. But
Okay.
yeah, he was like,
Whatever.
"Oh yeah,
Potato,
I'll do,
potato,
yeah,
yeah.
right."
Yeah.
He said he's vain. He even said he's like, I'm kind of vain. I don't want the track marks.
Yeah. Okay.
But like he says, he'll do these things, and it sounds kind of crazy to most people. But the point that really got me was when he said, if we're living in the United States, if we're going to go by, that we've been given, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
And as long as whatever I'm doing as a grown adult isn't infringing upon somebody else's life,
Right.
liberty, and their pursuit of happiness, then I should be allowed to do it. And to me, that was you know what? I'll agree with you there. As long as you're not infringing upon someone else's, inalienable rights, is inalienable.
Whatever that means today,
Yeah, whatever it
yeah.
means. I'm okay with that. And I had the conversation with a buddy way before this, that he's very conservative, and he was like, well, he made the argument. I'll paraphrase, but basically, if some dude's naked on my front porch and my kid can see him, like, well, that person's not, infringing upon your rights. I said, no, they are. Like, if they're in my view and they're affecting my child, they're doing something like
Right.
that, then that's affecting me.
Right.
But what you do inside your own household, if it's not affecting anybody, then why should we give a fuck what you do? You know what I mean? And that was kind of the argument. I was like, okay, I can agree.
I'm all for legalized drugs. I'm all for, not that I would do it. I mean, but that's my choice. Why can't I have that choice? And legalized gambling. So, I mean, I play poker. I enjoy cards. So, I mean, it's right now there's I think 5-6 states that allow online gambling. I mean, there's that Black Friday that happened like 10 years ago. I mean, that they shut down online poker stars.
Right.
And then, yeah, I mean, many people lost the money that they had in there. So it's like, at the end of the day, just, I mean, Amsterdam obviously does it. So, I mean, crime rates go down. I mean, we can talk about all sorts of things. So, like, tax it, you know, legalize it, control it. Now you control the distribution. So now the government can make more money if they want to based on the taxes. Now you control the purity of it in terms of like the quality and like the actual regulation aspect of it. Now you put a lot of your cartels, the mob, like the mafia out of business when it comes to the actual, like, you know, the supply chain management that comes along with it. So, I mean, but when it comes to that, you can talk about the religious aspect of it. So there's a lot of people who are against it. Obviously, who stands to benefit, who stands to lose from something like that too. I mean, there's that aspect of it, but at the end of the day, it's like you have your choice. I have my choice. I mean, if I want to do something, why do you need to tell me? I mean, if it's not impacting you, why does it matter? So, especially if I'm going to do something, but now I know the quality of it. I mean, how many people out there die out there, especially now with like the different components? I mean, Tony, that's one of your jobs, like out there. How much stuff is laced out there? That
a lot. I mean, the different the analogs. When you think you're getting heroin and it's fentanyl,
right.
And then you don't know the doses, and the fentanyl has analogs, and then
right.
So yeah, for sure.
I mean,
and yeah, no, that's something I do with my patients all the time when we do our drug tests. Like they'll be like, "Well, I took this," and I'm like, "Your urine shows like 3 different things," and they're like, "Well, I didn't take that," and I said, well, "I'm not saying you took that, but,
right. But you did.
I just want you to know it had a trace amounts, whether it was on your drug dealer's scale or whether it was pressed into this medication you were taking. Like it's in there,
right?
At least I want to educate you on
it's
that.
Not your poppy seed bagel.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
Well, Tony, so I know like I said, for our conversations, I felt like it was heated.
I don't.
No, I don't. I'm not saying heated like in general, but just for the conversations that we typically have, it got more heated than normal. It got warm. It was lukewarm.
Okay,
how about that?
So the only reason I would agree with that is because we didn't agree on it, and we usually agree on most things that we discuss. So I wouldn't say it's contentious. I would just say it was an aberration from you and me agreeing. Like I was like, I don't agree with that, and you're like, well, why? And I was like, well, here's why, and you're like, well, I don't agree with that, and here's why. So which
I just didn't know if you had anything additional that you wanted to,
which I appreciate. I mean, dude, so he just said a couple different things where he was like, and I liked him. I liked him. He was he was super smart. Good dude. He said a couple other things that I'm not going to get into that had to do with politics, which I thought were complete fucking bullshit. But dude,
this is like with all due respect, but then you go on.
Yeah,
no, I'm not even going to all due respect. No. I thought they were complete fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Like there's no, hey, I'm going to preface it with this. It just that's where I was at on that. But dude, outside of that, he was very smart in his fields. I mean, he's got the doctorate. He did the time. He put that in there. He just said a couple things that I was like, I don't know if I can get on board with that. Where he said that the majority of people that do these drugs, and maybe it was a sweeping generalization, and if I talked to him, maybe he would say, hey, you know what? Let me qualify that a little bit. Right. But he said that he said the majority of people do these drugs responsibly, and they kind of provide for their families, is what he said.
Right.
And he didn't make an exclusion when it came to like Mexican or like Bath produced meth.
Okay.
Because there's other methamphetamines that I could get on board with. You think MDMA, if it's actually pure, that's a methamphetamine, I could get on board with that.
Okay.
Different amphetamines, Adderall, Vyvanse, I could get on board with that as pharmaceutical grade. And then heroin, and I American heroin, not Afghani heroin,
not Chinese,
or Chinese, yeah, not the poppy fields, and fentanyl, but not medical grade fentanyl, just street fentanyl, pressed fentanyl, those kind of things. And he didn't make that distinction, and unfortunately for me, man, I see the statistics through SAMHSA. I see my patients, and kind of what that does when they get on it. And I don't see those people as responsible. I don't see them as making good decisions for their family because I deal with Child Protective Services. I deal with, family members that have deaths, and then that affects this person, and this person's upset because, this other person died, and then they commit suicide and they kill themselves, and it's a vicious cycle. And it's like, man, and I am not I don't enjoy loss of paternalism.
No.
I don't. I don't like seatbelt laws. You know, you think of going to the beach. Well, you can't swim unless there's a lifeguard there.
Right.
I don't like that. Like if I want to do something and I have the wherewithal to understand like what that truly means. Cognitively, I'm there. I'm firing on all cylinders. Like I do what you want. If you want to screw your body up, you know, if you want to slam 2 grams of heroin and OD, I guess do that. But at some point, and this does go back to kind of what you were saying about it affects other people. And if those other people, if the choice is taken away from them, if they're not of the what I would consider the age of reasoning, or if they can't stand up for themselves, then that is when I have a problem. And then you kind of have to go, well, you got to weigh that. Like, should we, you know, should this be illegal? Should you not be able to do heroin just because of the amount of children that it affects, you know, other family members that it affects? And then even outside of that, it goes into the other component we were discussing, about natural selection, and that's a damn slippery slope there.
Right.
You know, you get into medical interventions, you get into vaccines, and you're like, oof, how far are we going to go with this? But I think, man, it's tough for me, and like I said, I don't like the government to intervene. The less government, the better. Usually.
So, quick question, if I can, before you finish.
Far away.
So how would you classify those individuals that you meet with, whether it's your patient base, whatever that is, how representative of that is actually society versus like actually just being your sample pool? You know, are you talking about like the people that you see, like, is that actually 100% and you're talking about like the sample, like inadequate sample size? Or by the time they actually swim, you know, downstream and get to you, now you're talking about a small pool that's maybe not necessarly representative of the entirety of the society.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
No. So it is downstream 100%. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. But there's also a large percentage of people that they recruit to come to the center that I have to pay attention to that either do come or don't come.
Okay.
And they have a legitimate problem. So like that, you know, that gentleman was saying, hey, there's a huge majority of people that do opiates that don't have a problem. And I'm like, I don't know. I guess I think you need to define what a problem is.
Right.
And at what point does it become a problem?
Right.
Because, you know, I would say
problem mean?
Yeah, I would say 60 to 70% of the people that come to the clinic, I'm like, what? Take me on a journey right now. Like, tell me what happened to you. Like, let's go down the path of history. And they're like, well, you know, I had a knee injury. Mm-hmm. And after the knee injury, I was prescribed some Percocets. So the Percocets felt pretty good. I was on the Percocets for 4 months. You know, I got them, and you know, but I still had levels of pain.
Right. And the script ran out.
Yeah, the script ran out. I couldn't get a script again, and so I started buying them off the street.
Right.
But I was still in pain, and they said the pain got that more. The receptors got saturated. I needed something else. The Percocets got too expensive.
Right.
Vicodins got too expensive. Everything got too expensive, and so I turned to heroin.
Right.
And
which is like a tenth of the price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's, you know, it's stronger. It takes away the pain, and I'm not lying. Like when I went into that job before I started it, when they were like, oh, you know, you blame physicians for doing this, for peddling drugs, for the pill mills and stuff.
Well, Purdue Pharma. I mean,
in big pharma, I was like, that's bullshit, dude. Yeah. Like, but you know, there were a ton of physicians, man, that didn't keep track, or they just prescribed. Sure. And I'm not blaming it on the physicians. I'm not. I mean, there is a choice at some point, to an extent.
I mean, there's many different levels along the way.
They're all 100%, 100%.
Yeah, there's 8-10 different decisions that happen along the way.
The multiverse, if you will. Yes. We've had that conversation before.
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I think all the things you're saying, I think it kind of goes back to, and maybe some of the times when I talk to people, I forget that. I think differently than some people that I talk to.
No way. Yeah,
you forget that, the person, we goes back to the discussion with Dan, like you could have a conversation with two different people the exact same way. And each of those people are going to take that conversation and take different parts of it
Polar opposites, right?
And understand it differently.
Yeah.
So, with that, listening to that guy, and that guy, I think it was Carl Hart, was the guy we're talking about, just if people want to listen
show
to
notes.
Yeah, because it's a little different. It's a different conversation. And when I listen to those conversations, it goes back to that living in duality. You know, you can take one thing that somebody says and go, I like that. The rest of it's horseshit, but he's right on that point.
Yeah.
You know, versus to your
and
point to the doctors and,
Yeah.
you know, I think in some of those scenarios, I bet doctors are to blame because, you know, maybe this person only needed a 5-day script.
Sure.
And they would have been fine.
Sure.
But they gave him a 30-day script.
Right.
And now they're abusing him. And now they went down the, you know what I mean? So,
or they didn't follow up with them, or they didn't
Right.
pay attention to the fact that they kept coming back for 3 or 4 more scripts and recognized, oh God,
Right.
this person might be addicted to this. Like we need to titrate him down, which is something that he preached, which I do believe in. You can titrate those doses down to a certain extent, and I do want to qualify that too with I'm pretty pro drug, like you know. I'm not saying that there's a huge place for heroin. I do think there's a place for opiates to control pain. Meth, like I said, Mexican meth, bathtub meth, I'm very against.
yeah, when you're smoking bleach, I mean,
Right.
Yeah, not a good
that's
idea.
not
And
a-
No.
it does go back to some of the analogs that are in the drugs themselves. But you know, there is a place for the methamphetamines, the amphetamines, things like that, and hallucinogens.
Psychoactive
Marijuana,
drugs and- yeah.
even cocaine to an extent. Like I can get on board with a lot of these,
Right.
but I don't see just the devastation and wreaking the havoc on most people's lives through these drugs.
Yeah, no, and I agree. But, the other side of that would be, and I think I even said it in the conversation is, there's households that get destroyed without drugs or alcohol.
Assholes are assholes.
Assholes are assholes. Like,
Yeah.
Are-
There's
were
plenty of
you-
functioning alcoholics, drug addicts, everything like that. And yeah,
yeah, and I will say I
Shit
did.
rises to the
I
top.
like the way he phrased it when talking about the people that do recreational drugs or whatever it is. He said that a lot of them are still in the closet
yeah.
Yeah.
because you don't want to say for hell 15 years ago, oh, he smokes pot. Oh, I wonder what's next. Wonder what's going to happen to him. And now it's legal, and
Nancy Reagan, yeah, just
Yeah.
say no.
Well,
Right,
no, dude,
you know what I mean?
but that you got to think of the population too. My grandfather still thinks like that, and
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
yeah,
But how
he-
much of that's conditioning though? Like,
yeah,
first,
no,
like,
and that's
data and studies and stuff.
and that's the conversation we've had. And he's like, but that's a gateway drug. And I said, Gramps,
Yeah.
you're one of the wisest men I know. And I said, but how many peer reviewed studies have
He's
you
a
sat down
hippie,
and read?
yeah.
Yeah, that said that this really isn't a gateway drug. Or how many? I said, you might not know many people, but I know a lot of people
Right.
that are professionals that make they provide for their family. Great people go to church and they smoke some weed. They use it for anxiety. They use it for
I
insomnia.
know many people every night
Yeah.
come home and they're fully functioning millionaires that
Very effective to help their symptoms. Dude, they don't do any other drugs.
right. Anxiety,
Or-
pain relief, like whatever. You
Yeah,
wanna
and
call
I'll
it.
even take it a step further. And I'm not saying that I fully support this, but I know a decent amount of
Allegedly.
people that do cocaine.
Yeah.
And they are very high functioning.
Right.
I don't think they do it for a specific symptom. I think they just enjoy it, but they're still
I mean, if the
functioning.
symptom is have a good time, then yes.
There you go. They're having a hell of a good time.
Yeah. Well, why are we drinking this bourbon? Because it
Right.
tastes
Yeah.
good. We enjoy it.
Tastes good. We
It's
enjoy
all
it.
drug. I mean,
Right.
food is a drug. I mean, like the
Yeah.
liquor is a drug.
Caffeine.
True.
There you
Yeah,
go.
coffee,
Correct.
caffeine.
Like you said, I already said sugar.
Sugar.
That's
You
what I
know,
said
that's-
before, 100%. I will say, so I have a personal experience with this. So like when I was 15, I broke my leg. I broke my femur. As a physician, you probably know how much.
That's no bueno.
that's
what
flip
that
shit.
is.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
I mean,
that's
it's-
about the worst one.
yeah,
to-
you're talking
How
about-
except for
many
your, like,
damn bones have you broken?
Just those two. I mean, hold on. Let me knock on wood if I can hear that. So yeah, just
like
my
a
left
classic.
wrist,
Are
my
you
left.
Samuel L. Jackson Unbreakable or what?
Yeah, different story. Yeah, I see that people. No, yeah. So I mean, playing football broke my femurs. I mean, they put me in. I was 15 years
Hold
old.
on, which football?
American
American,
football?
yeah,
Okay.
not soccer.
Oh.
Football. Yeah, it's football. Yeah, American football. No, I broke my left femur. It was actually funny. My cousin was actually the one that tackled me and broke it. So that was a whole separate story. But so I'm in the hospital. So I mean, yeah, it was pretty jacked up. So like my femur, yeah. Later I find out it was actually harder than like steel. So I mean, that's another whole separate thing. But I was on a morphine drip as a 15-year-old or 14-year-old. I literally had the control. I had the button in my hand and like I'm pressing the button, like, yeah, good time, stuff like that. But like probably I would consider one of the best, outside of wife and kids, one of the best things that's ever happened to me was like when they got me off the morphine drip, I got home, I detoxed. And like I remember just like completely tripping balls for like 2 or 3 days. Like I remember the house we lived in, I lived on the second floor, but I actually just slept on the couch for like a week or 2 weeks because I couldn't really get it up the stairs. I remember like gnomes, like creatures coming out of the ceiling, coming out of the TV. Like
Jesus.
I was like detoxing for like,
You were just holding that button the whole time before
no,
you were
no,
in the hospital, weren't you?
no. They sent me home with nothing.
That's what I'm saying. The whole
Correct.
time when you're in the hospital, though, you were just like,
No, like button, good to go. Yeah. I'm like, let's go. Yeah.
Well, in America, they limit that so you can only get a certain amount,
Correct.
even though you can keep
no doubt.
pressing the button.
But still, it was enough to get me through
Sure.
whatever the pain level was,
Right.
or that I'm like, all right, give me some Tylenol or something like that. But yeah, so I went from like something as harsh as like morphine to nothing, or ibuprofen, and yeah, I had no codeine, I had nothing like that. So I got home, so again, I went from morphine to like nothing, and complete detox. It's like a 15-year-old, but like tripping balls. So like for me, that's probably one of the best things that happened to me. Like just knowing what happens afterwards. I'm like, I have no interest in this for the rest of my life. So like that's kept me off like that kind of stuff. Like anytime maybe I had an opportunity to do it, I'm like, not gonna do
solid.
it.
No.
I know what happens
Yeah,
after
I'm
that.
like, I'm good.
Hard
So,
no right there.
correct.
Hard
So
no.
yes, I mean from that point of view. But yeah, it's scary stuff. But I think going back to your point is just whether it's like physician follow up or like the proper follow up or things like that too, is just like there has to be a time and a place. So
Yeah, I think it's that level of accountability for both parties,
right,
the patient and the provider.
right.
Yeah, and it all goes back to me. It's that, like you said, living in that duality. You know, you can't just blame everything on one instance or one certain thing or one certain person. Like there's a lot of play
There's a sequence of events that lead us
Yeah.
up to where we're at right now.
and a sequence of events that'll come after.
Correct.
Yeah,
Which leads to infinite universes. Yeah.
infinite universes. Maybe that's all the aliens are, just time travelers.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows?
Oh man.
We just got to be grateful and thankful for what we have. And if you don't feel like you have enough, then go out there and get more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simple.
Take
right?
those from your pops.
Yeah, it's simple, right?
Take those
Yeah,
from your dad.
Super simple.
Go out and convince someone to
Get
give
your-
more.
get-
give you more of it.
Get your wheelbarrow out and just
Yeah.
make changes.
Let's go.
Yeah.
No,
Well-
but I was gonna say, like, if anything, I mean, maybe just more about my dad. But I mean, just again, came here. You know, my parents. I mean, I think some of the things we talked about before, but like, you know, you go out to lunch every day, right? What is that, like $8, $10, $12 at this point? So like, my mom would pack my dad's lunch. My mom, like, she was a piano teacher back in the day, like 2 days a week. You know, part time. She came here. She became a seamstress, working 60 hours a week. You know, stuff like that. Like, fucked up her back, but like, I mean, she just sat there hunched over, and like that's what she did because she did that for a hobby. But she came here and she found a way to like make that as into her business. But we lived here for a year and a half, and they bought a house. How many people never buy a house? You know, stuff like that. But like,
Yeah.
they worked their butts off, packed their lunches. I think a lot of it comes down to like your day-to-day decisions. Like, do you go out there and get a Starbucks and like buy a lunch, or do you save that and pack your own and save $10, $12, $14 a day, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's something else? I mean, if you're saving let's say you save $10 a day, you're saving yourself $250, $300 a month. Over the course of the year, it's, you know, $35,000, $4,000. They can add up to whether it's a better car or something like that too. So again, like, we were here for a period of time, bought a house, and just kind of kept evolving from there. So I mean, I think that is sometimes like the difference of like just coming here with the expectation to like, hey, yeah, this is the golden toilet, but I still have to, you know, flush it or work on it or whatever it is. There's still stuff around that I have to like do my part of. And again, self-accountability, self-responsibility, and just do my parts. I mean, I can't rest on my laurels just because I had a good last year. So
Self-responsibility.
Accountability and responsibility. I
Yeah.
love it. I
Check.
preach that all the time, man.
it's again, I don't know. It's again, I feel like me being in this chair right now, again, there's many different decisions led me up to it. Whether they're good, bad, neutral, whatever it is. I mean, I am here now. I got to make the most of it. I think you guys probably feel pretty similar to it. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody out there, if you want something, go get it. I mean, I don't know. It's so, this is something, and maybe this is going to get a little bit, maybe a little controversial, but my wife and I have this conversation at times. So, like, I forget race, forget any kind of like socioeconomic factors. Like, I think one of the challenges my wife and I have at times in terms of like the back and forth, came here, again, immigrant, zero English, like zero, like proper trade, whatever it was. Like, you come here, you evolve, you make the most out of it. But you have the opportunity, whether it's libraries, whether it's schooling, to go do and evolve. So then I think the challenge that I have at times, and I'm sorry if maybe it comes off the wrong way, but it's like, why can't somebody that lives wherever they live, whether it's the inner city, whether it's in the mountains of West Virginia, whatever it is, it just any social economic factor. But like America, it's the best flipping country in the world. Like I firmly believe it. Again, that's why I came here. Like I'm all in. This is my country. Like, I mean, USA, like everything. It's just, why can't she go out there and like, A, somebody speaks the language, and then B, there's tools in education that are out there between libraries, between colleges, between schools, like everything like that. You have to go out there. Obviously, there's a whole, conversation for maybe another day type of thing, but it's just, again, literally, we came here with nothing. So what I said before, maybe let me explain that a little bit, like in terms of context and background. So we were doing well when we left, like the old country. When we left the old country, like we transferred the money, whatever we had. Let's say we had 1 million rubles. My parents, maybe $3,000 to $5,000. So they came here with maybe $3,000 to $5,000. So with no language, with very few family to rely upon, with $3,000 to $5,000 in cash, and that was the starting point. And from that, they built to my parents live in a nice neighborhood. They have.
So it sounds like they worked hard and they were rewarded.
Correct.
Almost sounds like
God,
meritocracy.
don't you use that dirty word around here.
So maybe that was the context that we needed before, but like maybe that's just further elaboration. So and that's the trouble that I have sometimes too, where like, and again, I'm from another country. My wife is American born, like her family's back from overseas, but that's a couple of generations, things like that. So I think that's a challenge that I have sometimes. Like it's just the time that you put in, like the effort that you put in, like should be rewarded. If not, you're doing something wrong. If not, figure fucking something else. Like do something else, like whether it's a different vacational, whether it's different job, whatever it is, or a different state or something like that. But like you figure it out. If not, it's on you. Like take self-responsibility. So again, we came here with, I don't want to say nothing, 3,000 to 5,000. That's nothing.
That's
when
not a lot.
When that's all you have to your name, that's
like literally nothing.
pretty
Yeah.
much.
Like I remember like my mom like would make, so it was again, so like, I mean, my dad's mom, with her, whatever, my uncle lived somewhere else, but like it was my mom, my dad, my grandmother, my brother. So we had a 2-bedroom apartment for, what was that? Like 5 of us, my brother and I would share a room, like whatever that was. My mom would used to make like chicken noodle soup. She would throw like noodles in there, throw a chicken in there, a bunch of beans. We would have a 3-4 day for like worth of meals for like $3-4, if you will, between like, I remember her making like just mashing up a bunch of beans with like onions and stuff like that, some bread. Like now that's a meal, like some chicken that's in like this chicken noodle soup and stuff like that. Like I'm talking about like, these are all choices that we have. We don't have to go out to McDonald's or like Arby's or whatever it is to like have our dinners. That was the meal that you made, and that lasts us for days and days between like the carbs and like the noodles, like the chicken and all that kind of stuff. So like, again, at the end of the day, like we all have our choices. I mean, whether you're like it or not, like it's a free country. Like this is the best country in the world. Like it's just, what choices do you want to make? What choices are you okay with? If you're not, then you pivot, you evaluate, and you like move on, if you will. So I mean, but again, that's the challenge that at times, I love my wife, but sometimes we have this conversation to where, there's that socially oppressed system. And again, I'm sure there's so many underlying factors, and maybe I'm ignorant to it. Maybe I don't want to simplify any of it. It's a conversation you can probably have for days and days and days.
yeah. I mean, a conversation you have for years.
Right.
I think
Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, I think
it
it kind of resounds with me because, I wouldn't say I've had it that hard by any means. But like I told you, I don't know if it was on when we were recording or not, but I said, there's times where I didn't know what I was going to eat next.
Right.
And I listened to, do you know who Jocko Willink is?
Yeah.
So have you ever listened to his podcast with, he did one with, her name's Rose Schindler. She's a Holocaust survivor.
Okay. No.
But so her and her husband, or they survived, and then, they were able to come over to the United States.
Yeah.
And the first thing they did, where can I get a job?
Yeah.
And they were like, the people were like, well, you just like literally came out of the camps, like, and got on this like different, it was like a juvenile grant deal that they were able to come to the United States.
Yeah.
They're like, we got to get a job. We got to start. Let's go.
Right.
Let's go. And it was like, holy shit. Like, yeah. Okay. Like if that
No, what was me? Like, let's go.
Yeah.
Like,
shit
that's
that personal responsibility. Like
Right.
only you can make your life better. If you're waiting
You
around
can make yourself a victim, or if not, like you have that option. Like you
Right.
either become the victim or you become like you own your situation. I think along those lines, like one of the best books I read was Viktor Frankl, like A Man's Search for Meaning. It was about a Holocaust survivor, just talking about like his journey throughout the Holocaust and things like that. So I mean, it's a powerful thing, just looking through different things that happen through like trials and tribulations. But I mean, I don't know if it gets any more powerful than that, to where, and I think what I've said kind of throughout the course of this conversation, like life will kick you in the nuts and in your taint. And
Every
your
chance
asshole.
it gets.
Every chance. How do you respond to it? Do you lay down in the corner? Do you absorb the punch? And you're like, hey, okay, this is what happened during that punch. This is how it came. Like, how do I not like get punched myself like that the next time go around? How do I learn from it? And how do I learn, evolve, and just go from there, if you will? So those are choices that we all have at the end of the day. So
Yeah, and I think it goes down to that. It's that you have, if nothing else in this world, wherever you live, you always have a freedom to make a choice.
in this country,
In this country, it's
this
very
country,
amplified.
which is
and even anywhere
now.
else, even if you don't have
For now.
yeah,
For now.
But even if you don't have the rights,
Yeah.
even if you don't have the legal rights to do, certain things, or you always have the freedom to make your own choices, regardless of what it might mean your death.
Right.
It has for a lot of people
very true.
throughout history.
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I mean? So
Or moving to Texas.
yeah, or moving to tech.
Yeah,
yeah, but
and then separating. Yeah.
I think that's what it boils down to is, look, like you said, life's going to kick you in the balls regardless.
All the time.
And maybe some of those, ball kickings were institutionalized,
Right.
or, it was the government, or it was this, or it was your brother, or your significant other did it on purpose. All right. It happened.
Right.
It's happening. So now you
can't change it.
Right. You have the choice to make your own choices moving
Yes.
forward.
Yeah, you can't change it. I mean, it's already gone. So what happens next time?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Do you have to? I know you said.
We're at 4 o'clock, brother.
Yeah.
We're good. Yeah.
So, cool. Well, we can.
This is to be continued. Maybe.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can wrap it. Absolutely.
Thank you for coming,
this
man.
Is phenomenal.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate
Loved
you
it.
being on. Thank you. Man.
This is awesome. Yeah, I will do this again.